winning the first two games of the series against the Astros, your Rangers have taken a commanding lead in the battle for the Silver Boot. Now, Texas looks for the sweep of their in-state rival, but their challenge will be the toughest of the series as they face the American League Pitcher of the Month, Scott Kazmir. The season-long 10-game homestand ends tonight as the Rangers host the division-leading Astros, next on Fox Sports Southwest. Texas Rangers baseball is presented by AT&T UVerse TV. Now, as the temperature has climbed outside, the Rangers' temperature has kept pace. It'll be great to see what happens tonight because the temperature is 102 here at Globe Life Park as your Rangers get set to close things out against the Houston Astros. And welcome in, everyone, along with Tom Green, Steve Busby. Glad you could join us for this Wednesday night of Ranger baseball. And indeed, the Rangers are hot. They're 6-3 on this homestand, playing the best baseball that we've seen them play since, well, way back in May, probably. And tonight it'll be an interesting pitching matchup. The pitcher of the month for last month, that's Scott Kazmir. Going for the Rangers pitcher of the month in April, that would be Nick Martinez.
Yeah, you know, Nick is trying to regain that form that he had in April, and his last start against San Francisco is a pretty good step in that direction. He won that game, pitched into the seventh inning, only gave up a couple of runs. Scott Kazmir, on the other hand, is probably the hottest pitcher in baseball. An 0.26 ERA last month. Since he's joined the Astros in a trade, he's pitched twice. 7 innings, 7 2/3, giving up 6 hits and no runs. So he's on a roll. He's always pitched pretty well against the Rangers. Nick needs to be at the top of his game tonight.
Yeah, Nick knows he needs to go out and put up a lot of zeros because Kazmir has been doing exactly that against almost everybody. It'll be interesting to see what happens tonight. Rangers playing well, and Fritz Fielder getting that weapon of his ready to go. He's getting it all juiced up and all set to take on Scott Kazmir and the Astros. Starting lineup, first pitch coming up right after this. Southwest is brought to you by your Texas Ford dealers. Visit your local Texas Ford dealer to kick off the summer right. Ford is the best in Texas. By AT&T UVerse TV. UVerse has more live TV channels on the go than cable. And by Southwest Airlines. Book your low fare now at southwest.com. A warm night. The temperatures dropped to an even 100. Rangers out on the field now. Nick Martinez beginning his warm-up tosses. Before we get things too far along, let's check in with Emily Jones.
Well, Buzz, this has already been a highly successful homestand for the Rangers, winning 6 of 9 coming into this one. They can make it 7 of 10 with a win here tonight, and Jeff Bannister says, why not?
We've got a great challenge. We've got a lot of energy, and we've got a little bit of electricity in the stadium right now, and we've worked our way back to a point in the season and a record that we feel like that we might have a chance to run some teams down. So I like our chances. I like our energy, and I like the group of guys that are in this clubhouse and the fight that they have in them.
And when you look at the struggles that this team had to begin the year and pretty much the entire first half of the season here at home, this one has been even more impressive when you look at the quality of the opponents that they have played, which only does even more good things for their confidence level, guys.
All right, Emily, thank you. Yeah, very much so. Jeff Bannister's club playing extremely good baseball. Tom's going to tell you about the Astros lineup that the Rangers will face tonight.
2015 All-Star Carlos Gomez hit his first home run as an Astro last night. He bats second. Carlos Correa is third, followed by the third baseman Jed Lowry. Evan Gattis, fourth in the American League with 7 triples, is hitting fifth. Kobe Rasmus is sixth. Hank Conger gets the start behind the plate. He's hit 8 home runs this year. That's a career high. Luis Valbuena is 8th, and Jake Marisnick is 9th.
And the first pitch of the game, not unusual with Jose Altuve up there, is popped into center field for out number 1.
Didn't he know I was talking?
He must have forgotten.
I got to talk faster next time.
We'll take a look at Nick Martinez, the progressive scouting report for the birthday boy, 25 years old as of today. Try to build off that last outing against the Giants. 6 very solid innings, just a couple of runs. He got the command of his fastball back, and that set up the breaking pitches and the off-speed pitches in general that Nick was able to use against San Francisco. So he'll look to duplicate that kind of repertoire out there tonight. Pitch usage. Nick evened his record at 6 wins and 6 losses in that win against Madison Bumgarner and the Giants. Pitch inside to Carlos Gomez. 2 balls and no strikes. Gomez, a .348 hitter with the Astros. A home run, 4 driven in. Came over from the Milwaukee Brewers, a .263 hitter. He had 8 home runs just before he was traded on the trading deadline. Here's an off-speed pitch that finds a mark, and it's 2-1. Nick Martinez trying to help the Rangers to one of their best homestands of the year. They are 6-3 at the moment. Gomez showing bunt, pulls the bat back. It's a strike anyway. 2-2.
Can't run to first base unless you bunt it fair, Carlos. He had a lot of fun with that fake bunt.
He did.
So did Adrian.
Adrian's giving it to Gary Pettis, the third base coach down there. Martinez with a 2-2 pitch. Got him on the fist and a low pop-up.
Boy, that's a nice sign if you can locate that to the right-hand hitters.
2 gone. Well, the Ranger defense tonight delivered to you by the New Braunfels Convention and Visitors Bureau. This defensive group for the Rangers, very, very good, especially on this homestand. Rula gets the start in left at Shields and Ryan Strasburger in his Major League debut. Rangers has 2 errors in their last 6 ball games. Infield, the only change, Adam Rosales at second base in place of Ruben Odor. Chris Jimenez back behind the plate again tonight, his 2nd game in a row. 2 outs. Here's Carlos Correa taking strike 1. Correa, a .292 average, 13 home runs, and 34 driven in. Correa, a very impressive young man, just a 20-year-old shortstop, youngest position player in the major leagues. And he has made some plays in this series that I guess kind of fortify why folks have such high opinions of him, because he has been good, really good. 1-1 from Nick, just outside. The Astros coming into play tonight are 60-48. They have a 2.5 game lead over the Angels, who were victorious this afternoon. Angels walked it off at home in that ball game against the Cleveland Indians. Astros have lost a couple in a row. They are 5 out of their last 10 as far as wins are concerned. Astros still having trouble on the road this year. They are very, very good at home, but just 22-30 away from Minute Maid Park. Since the All-Star break, Carlos Correa leading the way for the Astros. The 2-2 pitch. Full count. Well, Correa hitting third, facing Nick Martinez. Jed Lowry, the third baseman, will be next. Breeze of about 15, maybe 17 miles an hour coming in from right field toward home plate. Typical summer winds here at Globe Life Park. Payoff pitch, chopped to third. Beltre on the fair ball throws across the diamond. And Nick Martinez and company have a 1-2-3 first inning. Nick just using 12 pitches to dispatch the Astros. Half an inning in the books. Astros nothing. Rangers coming up. Top of the first inning. Tom's going to tell you now about the Rangers Southwest Airlines starting lineup.
Well, Delano DeShields leads off. He's walked 8 times in his last 7 games. Had a big RBI triple in the middle of the Rangers' 3-run rally last night. Ryan Strasburger, minor leaguer, up for his first major league start today, will bat second. Prince Fielder is third. Adrian Beltre's fourth. Mitch Moreland is fifth. Elvis Andrus, a .385 hitter in his last 6 games, hit 6th. Ryan Rua, fresh off an inside-the-park home run Thursday against the Yankees, hit 7th. Adam Rosales is 8th, and Chris Jimenez bats 9th.
And that lineup for Jeff Bannister will face the 31-year-old left-hander Scott Kazmir. Kazmir, the Houstonian, 6-5 on the year. That's over 20 starts with the A's and with the Astros. Well above average fastball and changeup, and it's a devastating combination for the left-hander. Breaking ball doesn't have breaking ball, and he doesn't really have much of a weakness right now. He's commanding all of his pitches. Seems to be throwing whatever he wants to for strikes and any count. Tough play for the left-hander. He bobbles and throws. It's too late.
That's what speed will do to you, Buzz.
He had one chance. That was to field it cleanly and then make a strong throw, and it would have been close at that. Once he bobbled it, forget it.
Any other right-hand hitter, he would have picked it up casually, lobbed it to first base for an easy out. But he knew where that ball ended up rolling, that he has to get it quickly to get Delano. And so he makes a stab at it and missed it. Out of frustration, he threw it anyway.
Yeah, You're going to have to start picking up a little sound effect of that beep beep for the Roadrunner. Man, he really gets going, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's a tough call for the official scorekeeper.
Yeah,
they called it an error. You know, and I guess if he picks it up quickly and throws it to first, he's got a shot at him. But the speed forced him to rush it, and it turned out not to be a simple play.
No, 1 on, nobody out. Ryan Strasburger making his first major league appearance. Strasburger just called up yesterday as the Rangers optioned Leonis Martinez. Strasburger's going to bunt, and it's going to go foul. Good idea, though, for Strasburger, hitting a number 2 slide.
Yeah, that ball's fair. He's going to probably beat it out.
Well, Strasburger has very good speed, too. He had 27 stolen bases this year in half a year at AAA Round Rock.
The way that ball was hugging the line, I'm not too sure anyone could have made a play on that.
Ryan's out of Indiana State University. Played his college ball there, and Rangers selected him in the 2010 June draft. It was a 16th round pick. He was 27 out of 32 stealing bases this year at AAA. That was the 3rd highest steals total in the Pacific Coast League. Going to bunt, and this is a better one out in front. Making the throw, Convert's thrown down the right field line, and on to third base goes to Shields before the ball can be gotten back in. Now the Rangers using speed and putting pressure on the defense for the Astros. The Astros have not responded well.
That's exactly right. That's what speed can do. It can force you to make defensive mistakes. Conger thinks he's got a shot at it. Let's see how close it would have been. He's going to throw him out anyway.
And Conger, very much like Casimir on the Delino to Shields tapper, Conger knew he had to hurry, and rushing it just not on the mark at all. So 2 errors charged here in the first inning. And this is an Astros team that was second in the American League as far as best fielding percentage. They've been hampered here, and here's Prince Fielder, and he takes high for ball 1.
Now, both of those went as errors, and both of them, the errors were a result of the speed of the runner. It turned out to be relatively easy plays if you've got an average runner. But with both runners, they weren't average plays. You had to make a good play to get either one of them. Still went as an error on both of them.
Fielder lines one to right field. Backing up is Marisnik. He makes the catch, tagging at third, and trotting down the line to Lino to Shields. And Prince Fielder with the RBI sac fly. Rangers jump out 1-0. Prince Fielder finding some way to get the runner home from third with less than 2 outs. He has done that all year long.
Yeah, Prince hit that ball pretty well. Fastball outside corner. Lines it right at Marisnik. We've seen some line drives go over the outfielders' heads in this series, but Marisnik judges it. Made the play on it. Marisnik, very good outfielder, playing left field tonight with Gomez in center. But perfectly able to play center field himself.
Well, that's the first out here in the first inning. Adrian Beltre takes that off-speed pitch a bit low for ball 1. Beltre at 266 in his career. Just a 233 average against Scott Kazmir. You're not going to see many folks on the Ranger Ball Club that have glowing numbers against Kazmir. He has really pitched well his entire career against the Rangers. High and outside. Kazmir, in a career that has seen him amass an ERA under 3, 2.98, over 120 innings of work. He is 11-5 against the Rangers. 2 balls, no strikes to Beltre. That's out of play down the right side. Adrian taking it the other way, but it's well out of play. 2-1. Rangers back to the 500 mark. They're back there for the first time since the 4th of July. 53-53. They've done it on the strength of a 3-game winning streak. Trailing the Astros coming into play tonight by 6 full games. And now trailing the Angels by 3.5 after the Angel victory. Kazmir with a 2-1. 3 balls and a strike. Well, Adrian eyeballing a couple of fastballs away. Hitting 4th in the order, Mitch Moreland, the Ranger first baseman, will be next. Rangers a run on 2 sacrifices, 2 errors here in the first inning. So taking advantage of what they've been given. 3-1 pitch coming. Ball 4. 2 on with 1 out. And we'll take a look at the Houston Astros defense. As we remarked, second best defensive unit, statistically anyway, in the American League. And the 0.26 ERA by Scott Kazmir in July, the 3rd lowest ERA in Major League Baseball history. And that defense helped him in the 2 games. As Tom told you, Kazmir 14 2/3 scoreless innings. And that scoreless streak has come to an end here against the Rangers, but he has pitched extremely well. Moreland trying to climb the ladder and couldn't quite get up high enough. 0-1. Mitch, a .284 average with 16 home runs. He and Prince Fielder tied for the top spot on the ball club. Mitch has not faced Kazmir very often. It seems one of the left-handers that he has not been in there against. 0 for 2 is all. Conger having to block that ball in the dirt. 1 ball and 1 strike. Scott Kazmir originally taken out of high school in the draft by the New York Mets. First round pick. And was traded in a big trade over to the Tampa Bay Rays. Tampa Bay feeling they needed an ace and they didn't have one in-house, and they traded for Scott Kazmir with that in mind. Brought the young left-hander in. Scott had a few good years in Tampa Bay, although not quite living up to the hype that was there. That's low and outside, 2-1. That trade happened in 2004. Kazmir just 20 years of age at the time. 2005, 2006, he was a 10-game winner. Bumped it up to 13 in 2007. And the next year, won 12. Started having some arm problems that year, 2008. Tampa Bay then shipped him off to the Angels. 2-2. Mitch in his last 10 ball games, that .310 average with 7 RBI in those 10 games. He's been one of the better Ranger hitters with runners in scoring position. He has Ryan Strasburger out there at second, Adrian Beltre at first. Kazmir with a 2-2 pitch. Line to center, that's a base hit. Strasburger being waved around third. Here comes the throw from Gomez, not in time. An RBI single by Mitch Moreland. The Rangers are on top 2-0.
One thing we've seen from Gomez in center field, he will catch it and he will wind up and throw it as hard as he can almost every time, and not one throw he's made has been on line. Every throw has been offline. Every one of them is going about 98 miles an hour when he throws it too. You got no chance to get Strasburger at the plate on this ball. Watch him wind up and throw it. Winds up, takes about 5 steps, watches the runner, and then throws a low sinker about 8 feet outside.
I'll say one thing that time, though, his hat stayed on.
Did it? I didn't notice.
Yeah, it didn't pop off.
Nice job of hitting by Mitch Moreland. Yeah. Lefty versus lefty.
Mitch driving in his 57th run of the year. So Adrian stopping at second on the play. Rangers with their first hit here in the first inning. They lead 2-0. Ryan Strasburger scoring his first major league run. So still just 1 out. Here's Elvis. Andrus at 258. 1 ball, no strikes.
Well, Kazmir's pitched against the Rangers 3 times this year, giving up 8 hits in 21 innings. pitched 2 gems against the Rangers. One pretty good game, but 2 gems. It's a 7-inning game and an 8-inning game where he gave up 1 hit and no runs. Nice play by Conger.
Yeah, that was that 1 hit for 8 shutout innings. That was the last game he pitched against him, I believe, in May, or in June. That trip out there in June. He was something. Rangers, if I remember right, didn't get a hit until like the 7th inning.
Yeah, I don't remember.
2-0, the count to Elvis. Out of play. Now 2-1. Well, talking about Scott Kazmir, our Kubota Power Stats for tonight. ERA leader at 2.10 in the American League. A 208 opponent's batting average at second. How about 1.04 walks and hits per inning pitched? That's 4th in the American League.
With all those numbers, he's only 7-5, 6-5.
6-5, yeah. Elvis loops one to left center field. That is down for a hit. Beltre being waved around. Here comes the throw from Gomez. It's offline. Elvis with the RBI single. The Rangers lead it 3-0.
Clutch hits. Men in scoring position. One more to Gomez. He's going to have to leave with a rotator cuff injury. Elvis gets jammed just a little bit, and it's probably a good thing because that allowed the ball to fall in front of Gomez. It's a little better, it would go far enough. And here comes a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, a little bit offline. Adrian scores, and Rangers keep it going.
Gomez having a little chat with himself. So, a 3-0 first inning so far. Rangers still only have 1 out. And Ryan Rua, first ball swinging, skies to right center field. Rasmus backing up, makes the catch. Tagging at second, moving over to third is Mitch Morley. Rua, the fly out for the second out. Now runners at the corners for Adam Rosales.
It looked like a hanging breaking ball that Ryan got underneath. Otherwise, he might have lined that in the gap or maybe a little bit farther. That ball had some hang time on it. High changeup, I guess. Yeah. Belt high and out over the plate.
He's probably going to see that in his dreams about 4 o'clock in the morning, isn't he?
Yep.
Wow.
I hate to miss one like that. He had a good swing at it.
No, 2 gone now. Adam Rosales, the 8th hitter in the Ranger lineup, will step to the plate. Got Moreland at third, Andrus at first. Here's a changeup that floats in for strike 1. Rosales a 220 average overall, 3 home runs, 7 driven in. He's had pretty good numbers against Kazmir, 7 for 22. That's that 318 figure. Kazmir, a check of Elvis over there at first. 0-2. Rangers forcing Kazmir to get into the mid-20s pitch count wise here in the first inning. And on a warm night, it's now warm because it's down below 100. It was hot 1 degree ago. That can play havoc with a pitcher. You get sapped in the first inning, and all of a sudden you can't recuperate.
My car said 104 when I got to the ballpark
today.
It's supposed to be like that for the next few days, evidently. Might be 104 in Seattle, though.
Probably not. Kazmir, a belt high set. And the 0-2 pitch. Fouled away. Our vaunted leader, Eric Josephson, said it's going to be in the low 80s.
You know, when it's in the 80s in Seattle, they call it almost a heat wave.
Right. They may not this year. They had a stretch up there of almost 100-degree temperatures.
Did they?
Yeah. Yeah, they had a real bad...
good weather for rafting up there.
Real
Done
bad
that
July.
a couple of times
Yeah.
up there.
Got him swinging. Well, Kazmir gets Rosales to end the inning, but Rangers scored 3 times on 2 hits, 2 errors, and leave 2. After 1, the Rangers 3, the Astros nothing. Southwest data, strong fan, and you just might see yourself on one of our upcoming broadcasts. This is all brought to you by the good folks at T-Mobile. We'll have our selection for tonight a little bit later on. Now, Nick Martinez, a birthday present from his teammates, a 3-run first inning. So he has that lead as he goes to work here in the second. Jed Lowry leading off and takes high for ball 1. It'll be Lowry, Gaddis, and Rasmus, the first 3 Astros. Lowry, the switch-hitting infielder. And with Carlos Correa up for the last month and a half, Lowry getting a lot of playing time over at third base. He had not played there until he came back off the disabled list a few days ago for about the last 4 years, reacquainting himself with the position. Last 11 games, this goes back to before the injury happened back in April. A 389 average with a home run and 5 driven in. Nick to the wind, the 2-0. Now 2-1. We were talking the other night about when Lowry got hurt, he was one of the offensive forces on this Astro ball club. And really, it was kind of a bittersweet situation for the Astros. They lost their starting shortstop, but it kind of forced their hand as far as bringing up Carlos Correa about a month later. And that may have turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to all parties concerned, except for Lowry.
Yeah, in the way he's played, no matter what happened, they might have had a hard time not calling him up anyway.
Yeah.
Man, that guy's been unbelievable.
But, you know, he missed all that time last year with injury, and Carlos Correa did. And so they were thinking about giving him virtually a full year, maybe a September call-up this year.
But he probably got better quicker than even they thought.
Yeah, I think you're right.
They might not have anticipated this. They anticipated it, but maybe not this early.
A.J. Hinch and company. A very talented young team in Houston, trying to find a way to put it all together and get to the postseason. Lowry slaps it out of play.
If you get an opportunity to manage and you see Altuve and Correa, eventually Springer, and then you trade for Gomez and you see their young starting pitching that they have, I think you would say this might be a pretty good place to be a manager for the next few years.
Hang your hat for a while there?
Yeah. I like their future.
Another 3-2. And Lowry shoots one to right center field. That is up the alley. A long run over. And Delino to Shields cuts in front of Ryan Strasburger to make the catch. No, 1 out, a lot of ground covered out there by the liner to Shields. And before Evan Gattis comes in, let's say hello to Jim Knox.
I appreciate it, Buzz. Here's something good for the Ranger fans to help out a good cause and to help raise money for the Texas Rangers Baseball Foundation and Promise House. Prince Fielder and his wife Chanel on August 27th, so Thursday, will be unveiling his new wine. And that will take place to help out Promise House and the Texas Rangers Baseball Foundation. To find out where and how you can be a part of it, log on to uncorkforacause.com. Buzz?
All right, Noxie, thank you. Here's Evan Gattis, the Astros DH tonight. He takes strike one. Gattis at 244, 17 home runs, 59 RBI. Gattis just 1 for 9 in this series against the Rangers. Gattis brought in, as we've talked about, from Atlanta to see if they can get a little more consistent run production in the middle of the order. And he's pretty much filled that bill here lately, the last couple of months.
Delano's moving around like he tweaked something. He hasn't said anything, so he must be okay. Hopefully it's not any kind of a muscle injury.
Just a bit outside, and the count moves to 3-1. So Gattis ahead of the count. He is hitting fifth. He'll be followed by the right fielder, Colby Rasmus. Gattis, as you can see, 0 for his last 7 times to the plate. And Nick fires a strike. So for the second straight hitter, Nick has gone to a full count. He was able to get Jed Lowry on a drive to right center. See what he's able to do with Evan Gattis. Gattis asking for time. Nick to the wind, the payoff pitch. Lost him. We'll take you back to that fly ball that Jed Lowry hit to start this inning off.
At 6, the right fielder, 28, Colby Rasmus.
Yeah, he's grimacing a little bit, so something bothered him right after he made that catch.
A 1 on, 1 out. Here is Rasmus. Colby Rasmus, a 236 hitter with 13 home runs. And Nick hits the outside corner for strike one. Rasmus 1 for 5 in the series. He had 3 walks last night. Went 0 for 1, 3 walks and a stolen base, and scored a run in that 4-3 Ranger win. Rangers in a defensive overshift for Rasmus. Hit well to center field. Retreating. Delino to Shields makes the catch. And back to first goes Gattis. There are 2 out. Next will be Hank Conger. Conger, switch hitting catcher. He's sharing duties with Jason Castro. Castro getting the majority of playing time, but Conger's been a pretty hot hitter of late. 254 is his average, and he's 3 out of 5 against Nick Martinez. Oh and 1. Conger, a modest 3-game hitting streak, but he's gone 6 for 10 in those 3 games. He's hitting .312 in the last 28 games. That goes back to June. 1 ball, 1 strike. Astros got Conger in the offseason from the Los Angeles Angels. Needed a compliment to Jason Castro. Look at the numbers that the 2 catchers have put up lately, and they've done a pretty good job, because Conger in those 3 games, you saw that 6 for 10. He's had 2 home runs and 6 RBI in those 3 games. Castro, meanwhile, in his last 5 games, has had 3 home runs in 20 at-bats and 10 RBI. Pretty good combination behind the plate for you.
Conger's already got the most home runs he's ever had. He's never really had a chance to play every day, but he'll have more home runs this year in any season he's had in the past.
Seemed like when he was with when he first came up with the Angels, they were really high on him. They were saying that Conger was going to be their catcher of the future, and I don't know whether he disappointed Mike Scioscia or did not develop as quickly as the Angels had thought, but he kind of fell out of favor after a year or so.
He was a first-round choice. He was the 25th pick in the draft by the Angels back in 2006. So, yeah, they're probably pretty high on him.
Up there now with Gaddis at first and 2 away. A 2-ball, 2-strike count as we play in the top of the 2nd inning. Over to Beltre, the only one on that side of the diamond. Adrian just had to go a step to his right. That'll do it. The Astros strand a runner after 1.5. Rangers leading by 3. Is brought to you by your Texas Ford dealer. Visit your local Texas Ford dealer to kick off the summer right. Ford is the best in Texas. The Ranger fans out enjoying what has become a little more comfortable an evening. 99 degrees as we start to play here in the bottom of the 2nd inning. Chris Jimenez to start things off. He'll be followed by the top of the order, Delano DeShields and Ryan Strasburger. 3-0 Rangers. 3 runs on 2 hits and 2 errors committed by the Astros in that first inning. Jimenez 3 out of 9 in his 3 starts. Takes strike 1 from Kazmir. Chris 1 for 3 in previous matchups against the Southpaw. No swing as the appeal goes down to first, and Andy Gonzalez said, "Nah, he didn't go." Kazmir back with a 1-1 pitch. Boy, he hit that ball solidly to center. Gomez started in, now he's going back. Still going back. Goodbye.
Wow. Gomez thought he was going to catch that short of the warning track, I think. Ball just kept going and going.
Chris Jimenez to dead center field. It is 4-0 Rangers.
How about the job the new catchers are doing for the Rangers? They're doing something offensively every game. Chris had a single and a stolen base to spark the 3-run rally yesterday that the Rangers had to score their fourth run. The fastball looked like he got underneath it and popped it up.
That's what I thought. It sounded great.
Yeah, it was one of those you say, oh, he just missed it.
Yeah.
Gomez took 2 steps in. That got up in the air and just kept on going.
Wow. Now Delino DeShields for his second time to the plate. And he couldn't check his swinging time. It's no balls and 2 strikes. Delino hit a little tapper out in front of home plate and hustling down the line forced a bad throw by, or actually a bad pickup by Scott Kazmir. And call strike 3. Delino leaning on it, knew it was in there at the bottom of the zone and just kept on going. Second strikeout for Kazmir. 1 out.
Well, that ball cut back into the strike zone.
Well, 1 away. Here's Ryan Strasburger, who had a sacrifice and reached on an error back in the first inning. And some more information on that home run by Chris Jimenez. That's his first home run since September 29th of 2012. That was when he was with Tampa Bay and hit one out of the yard. So it's been going on 3 years for Chris. Nice to see. And that was the big man's territory out there in center. Two and all the count to Strasburger. Got him on the fist. And Correa. 2 out. But Strasburger does get down that line pretty well.
Correa took his time, threw it hard. Turned out to be a fairly close play.
Now Prince Fielder coming up. Prince had a line drive sacrifice, driving home the first Ranger run. Liner DeShields scored back in the first. So Prince now with 63 RBI. Takes that cutter on the outside corner for strike 1, or breaking ball. Fielder, a 4-game hitting streak. He's gone 7 for 18 in those 4 games. He had, as we talked about the last couple nights, been in a pretty severe downturn for him. He'd been hitting 220 or so for an extended period, about 10 games. One and two. And it looks like he's come back out of it and swinging the bat with authority. It'd be nice to see get Fielder and Beltre all both swinging the bat well at the same time. That pitch just missed. Kazmir was headed toward the dugout, and he had to retrace that last step. There are those numbers: a home run, 3 RBI in those 4 games. 2 balls, 2 strikes, the count. Got him on the fist, and that's out of play over the Astros dugout. Fielder still the 9th best average at home in the American League, 328. Lays off that, and the count is full. So Fielder trying to reach with 2 outs. Adrian Beltre will follow him. Rangers leading 4-0. Here in the second inning, Scott Kazmir being treated rather rudely by the Rangers, which is exactly what they were trying to do. Got him swinging as Kazmir pulled the string and gets his 3rd strikeout. Chris Jimenez, though, led off the second with his first home run in almost 3 years. Dead center field. That gives the Rangers a 4-0 lead as we go to the 3rd. 14th against the Tampa Bay Rays. We'll enjoy a special post-game fireworks show set to Star Wars music. That's sponsored by Takis. There will also be special appearances by Star Wars characters out on the concourse. Visit TexasRangers.com. Use the coupon code FIREWORKS, and you'll get $14 upper reserve tickets for that. Luis Valbuena leading off the Astros' third inning. Martinez missing down and away. 2 balls, no strikes. Valbuena, Marisnick, and Altuve here in the third. Two and one. Good, tailing sinking action on that Nick Martinez pitch. Nick from Hialeah, Florida, a suburb of Miami. Went to Fordham University, primarily a middle infielder and closer, back into the bullpen guy when he was in college. Said he wanted to be an infielder as a professional, but was talked out of it, and I think he made the right choice. Gorgeous evening out here at Globe Life Park. Temperatures in the upper 90s. Winds, though, moving the air around comfortably in the ballpark. 2-2 pitch. Yanked foul down the right side, back into the seats. We'll try it again.
That's what Valbuena's looking to do. Hit that ball in the seats. He's done it 20 times this year. The home run he hit the other night was the first one he'd hit in over 80 at bats. You go back 20 games or so, 19 home runs he had. Made him pretty good power hitter early in the season for them.
Chopper to the right side. Mitch cuts it off. And covering first, the good fielding. Nick Martinez, that is out number one. Jake Marisnick will be next. But first of all, we're going to send it over to Dana Larson for a Mazda game break. All right, Dana, thank you.
Walk-off walk and walk-off wild pitch in Anaheim.
Yeah. Walk-off weirdos. Jake Marisnick taking strike one. Our DirecTV wild card standings as we speak here this evening. Angels still in that top spot. They're a game and a half up on Toronto. Toronto now a half game up on Baltimore. Minnesota a full game back. Rangers 2 games back as they play tonight. Tampa Bay now 2.5 back. And you throw Detroit in there, then you got the White Sox all within 4.5 games. It's going to be a dandy month of August and September. One ball and 2 strikes to Marisnick. 231 average. Now 2-2. First time we've seen Marisnick in a starting role in this series. Once the Astros got Carlos Gomez, Marisnick, who had been playing center field, kind of shunted off to the sides and getting an infrequent opportunity to play.
Yeah, Preston Tucker has done a nice job. Not sure when Springer comes back, but it'll be tough getting playing time in that outfield.
Nick Martinez with his first strikeout of the evening.
Good slider. Mixed in some sinkers and finished it off with a good, sharp breaking ball. Those pitches, it looks like with 2 strikes you need to swing at it. And then when it ends up, there's not much you can do with it.
That's what we were talking about, Nick Martinez, the fastball command. He went inside to Marisnick a couple pitches before, got that established in his mind. Then that opened up the outside corner for him for the breaking ball.
Yep, funny how that works.
It's pretty classic pitching. Here's Altuve. He's seen 2 pitches tonight. He swung at both of them and hit both of them. First time he flied out to center field, and this time he tops the foul.
You know, if you want to hear one of the all-time baseball cliches that you probably hear from the time you start off in the rookie league, when someone says, "How do you pitch that guy?" Up and in, down and away.
Yep.
I mean, that's pretty much what people said the second you start talking about it.
Delino going back, and he got a good break going back to his left, made the catch. And a nice inning again. Nick Martinez, a 1-2-3 frame. The Astros are gone after 2.5. Rangers by 4. Fans will be treated to a Medical Center Arlington Adrian Beltre bobblehead. Join us to see the Rangers take on the Rays that day and get your collectible bobblehead. Visit TexasRangers.com or call 972-RANGERS to get your tickets. And Adrian, the honoree of that bobblehead day coming up, will lead off the Ranger third inning. Beltre, Moreland, and Andrews, with the Rangers leading 4-0 against Scott Kazmir and the Astros. Beltre drew a walk in the first, came around to score. Elvis Andrews drove him home with a base hit. 1 ball, no strikes. Beltre having a great homestand. He is 12 for 34. And this is the 10th game of the homestand. A couple of home runs for Adrian. Certainly looked like, we were concerned, I remember at the start of the homestand, Adrian hit a couple balls that didn't travel very well, and he kind of dropped the bat awkwardly a few times. Haven't seen him do that in the last few days.
No, and it really seems like some of the balls are jumping off his bat a little bit better, too.
Kind of got in on him, and the center field where Carlos Gomez is, that's out number 1. No, Beltre flies out, now Mitch Moreland. Moreland drove home his 57th run of the year with a base hit to center against Kazmir in the first inning. That might have been the most important hit of the inning. It set the stage for another run with Elvis Andrews' base hit. But having the left-hander Moreland facing a tough left-hander in Kazmir and getting a pitch to do something with, driving in a run, was huge.
Yep.
1 ball, no strikes.
I mean, you look at the lineup tonight, Hamilton, Odor, Chu with a night off. It's a nice off night to have, really, facing a tough lefty. And then tomorrow's an off day. You go into Seattle with a couple of days off. Kind of a strategic off day for the Rangers and those left-hand hitters. And the other thing that Jeff Bannister said, he just felt like some of the right-hand hitters gave him a pretty good chance to win this ball game. Wanted to go with the lineup he's got right now.
3-0 to Mitch. Well, and the way the ball club's playing right now, it seems like whoever comes off the bench produces.
Yeah, just like at Chris Jimenez.
One of those three, exactly.
And you know, even though Strasburger's bunt was an error, still made something happen.
Yep.
Got on base in the 3-run inning. I think if you're a manager, you like the opportunity to get a player into the lineup for the first time as soon as you can. You got Ryan into the lineup tonight. And the other guys are part of the team, deserve an opportunity to perform. Hopefully keeps the other guys well rested and ready to go in Seattle.
Well, and you know, at some point, whoever's on your bench, you're going to need him in a key situation, whether it's due to injury or just due to circumstance of the game. And the more engaged, I guess we should say, everybody is, the better chance you have of being successful.
Yep.
Now, that may be the toughest thing a manager has to do. People have said, well, managers, the hardest thing they have to do is manage a pitching staff. I think keeping everybody at their top level of, at their peak level of performance ability is probably the most difficult thing. Mitch lines out the center, two gone. Having everybody feel like no matter when they're given the call, they're all ready to go, and you have a pretty good idea of what they're going to produce for you.
Yeah, I'm not sure that a manager on a winning team can give enough playing time for a player to feel that way. So it's really up to the player when he's not playing to develop a routine so that when he does get his chance, he is ready. And that is difficult for guys that aren't playing every day. It's a lot easier if you get a chance to play every now and then than you just sit on the bench for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That's for sure.
Ryan Ruiz swinging a bat in that on-deck circle. Meanwhile, Elvis fouling off that first pitch, 0-1. Andrus drove in his 39th run of the year with a single in the first. And a high chopper to third. That's cut off by Lowry. 3 up, 3 down. First time that Scott Kazmir has sent the Rangers down in order. We have finished 3 here at Globe Life Park. The Rangers 4, the Astros nothing.
We got a number of girls RBI softball teams in the stands tonight because the World Series RBI softball event happens tomorrow in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We got Hoboken out of New Jersey in the house. And Jade, this is a nice evening for you guys. You had a parade before the game. Now you get to check out the Astros and Rangers.
Yeah, it's cool. We always get paraded around and showed off when we make it to the World Series, so it's a good experience for the girls.
What is the RBI program all about?
It's all about, giving the girls something to look forward to so that, they don't get themselves in trouble, getting themselves something to motivate and get them out of the streets, basically.
All right, you used to play on the RBI, one of the RBI teams. You intern in MLB, and now you're coaching a team, so you're keeping it in the house, huh?
Yeah, I like to stay involved with the girls as much as I can, any way that I can stay in.
All right, well, best of luck to you girls tomorrow. Have fun, and we'll see you. We'll see you soon. Best of luck. Thank you. All right, thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Noxie.
The
RBI tournament, both softball and baseball here in the Metroplex over the next week or so. Well, top of the 4th inning, and Carlos Gomez leading off against Nick Martinez, who deals a strike. It's 2-2. Joining us in the booth, as always, in the middle couple of innings, Mark McLemore. Mac, good to see you this evening. And is it warm enough for you?
It is.
Are you loose
warm.
now?
I'm very loose.
Good.
I think I woke up loose, which is not normal, but I'll take the heat.
Well, this is what it's supposed to be, right? It's August. It's North Texas.
We're in Texas, exactly. What do you expect? It'd be a problem if it was 50.
Yeah, it would be.
So we'll take 150 right now. Wait till next week. That's when I hear it's going to be
worse,
toasty. Yes.
Okay.
Of course, you guys will be gone. I'll let you know all about it.
And Nick misses just low for ball 4. Well, that is the second walk issued by Nick Martinez, and Carlos Correa coming up. We've talked about the comparison. Carlos Correa, well, here's a couple of pretty good young players when they came up. And you look at the comparison average-wise, no comparison. Carlos Correa 292 and A-Rod 239, 224 for Mike Trout. Home runs, similar comparison. And RBI, double almost for Correa. On base plus slugging. Well, you get the idea that Correa, at a similar stage, just coming up to the big leagues, is in better shape statistically than either of those two. And we know how Alex turned out statistically. We know how Mike Trout is turning out. That's pretty good company to be in.
That's very good company. I wouldn't have thought the numbers would have been that much different, but they are. I mean, jumping off the page at you. This young kid's got some talent for sure. And we've seen it on display the couple of series that we've seen him so far.
Sure have.
Oh,
how about this? Now we
you really?
Same time period. Same time period. What about these? That 235 for this young guy?
Wow.
That's a young Mark McLemore. How about 8 RBI and a 603 OPS? That's pretty good.
You really? I owe you guys for that.
Throw to second. No, not in time as Gomez able to just avoid the tag of Adam Rosales. He gets the stolen base. Had to throw that in, Mac, and that's pretty impressive when you first got there. That's pretty good.
Pretty good throw by Jimenez. Gomez is able to keep his body on the bag all the way through it, and then finally his foot. Not much Chris could do, though. Good jump, good speed.
Adam trying to slap that foot off the bag. Couldn't get it done. So Gomez now in scoring position. 1 ball and 1 strike to count to Carlos Correa. Correa bounced out to third, his first time to the plate. Taking it the other way, slicing it, and that is foul down the right side. We got one more. I got one more for you. Another comparison through 49 games. How about this young fella? Got that. Kind of looks like a young Frank Howard. 203 average, 3 home runs though. Look at that. 3 home runs, 10 RBI.
My body wasn't as big as his arm.
And a 623 OPS.
Let me tell you guys something. Mike Trout, Alex Rodriguez, Carlos Correa, they got nothing on Mac's hair. Mac's hair.
That's a good point.
Let me tell you something. And that mustache.
That's a very good point.
Rocking it. Thank you.
I mean, you were owning that look.
Look at that. Not everybody can wear that hair.
That is strong to quite strong, sir. I approve of that look on
Thanks,
Mark
Tim. I
McLemore.
appreciate you. Thank you so much. You know, there's some cards that you have that you just really want to destroy.
Yeah.
That would be one.
Nice play by Elvis, and staying at second is Carlos Gomez, out number 1.
Nice play by Elvis. Nice pitch by Nick.
Yeah.
Got that fastball, the sinking fastball, in on the fist and really jammed Correa and him right off the hands. A little bouncer. Elvis has to charge it. Has to sneak it on that short hop, which he does. Throwing on the run. Elvis is playing some great baseball right now. Offensively, defensively, you name it. He's doing it.
Very solid for the Rangers shortstop. That's for sure. And Nick Martinez making good use of the infield tonight. He's getting the pitches down in the zone, getting the ground balls. And everybody making the plays.
I think that's where he had most of his success those first 5 or 6 outings of the year. keeping the ball down in the zone and definitely pitching inside and with a quicker pace. So he looks a lot more like that right now, his last couple of outings, than before that.
Hit well to right center field. Jed Lowry going up the alley. And that is off the wall. It's backed up by Strasburger. Around third comes Gomez. He will score on a double by Jed Lowry. It's a 4-1 Ranger lead.
Well, generally speaking, especially when you've got a lead, that leadoff walk can come back to haunt you. Leadoff walk to Gomez turns out to be a run. Lowry hit the ball almost like that his first time up. Hit a fairly long fly ball to center field. This one, though, he got on the good part of the bat. And there was no way either outfielder could run this one down.
Yeah, good job by Ryan Strasburger, too, to make sure he had that play backed up. No, a 4-1 Ranger lead now. That was the first hit of the night for the Astros against Nick Martinez, who went for 2 bases and an RBI. Evan Gattis couldn't check his swing. It's strike one. Gattis drew a walk back in the second inning. Nick, a check of second. A couple of times back there. 1 ball and 1 strike. Nick went through a stretch prior to his last start, the win that he had against the Giants. Had won in about 6 weeks. Had to be frustrating. Spent a little bit of time with Rangers trying to manage his appearances and innings a little bit. A couple of outings at Double-A, or Triple-A, I should say. Just worked a total of 6 innings in the 2 outings down at Round Rock. Kind of got things back together, came back up, and has thrown the ball better, closer to the command that he had earlier when he went 2-0 in April with an ERA down at 0.35. He falls behind Gattis now, 3 balls and a strike. Well, Gattis hitting 5th. He'll be followed by Colby Rasmus. Nick trying to get things back under control, minimize the damage to what has been done. Leave it right at that. Elvis in the hole, jump throw. Did he get there? Yes, he did.
Well, one thing as an infielder you can count on, if it's in the dirt, Mitch is going to scoop it. Elvis did the heavy lifting, but Mitch helped out. He turned a potential infield hit into an out.
Great play on both ends. Elvis got to that ball, nice little backhand. And this is the play he's becoming famous for, the jump throw. And Mitch on the other end, just, an infielder's best friend right there. A first baseman that can pick it. Preferably a first baseman that's about 6'3", 6'4", helps as well. But hey, yeah. Mitch isn't that tall, but hey, he can pick it.
What do you figure, Mac? If you're playing every day, a first baseman with bad hands who can't pick the ball in the dirt, what's he cost you? Maybe 4 or 5 errors in the course of the season?
He's going to cost me at least 5, I know.
So. Well, almost everybody else, too. You just take that for granted, but not everybody can do that.
Strasburger coming on, he dives and comes up with it.
That was a rope.
Ryan has started back, then came on and committed himself to the dive and made a dandy. So nice play by Strasburger, and the damage is minimized. Astros get a run on a hit and leave one after 3.5. It's the Rangers 4, the Astros 1. Southwest Airlines. Book your low fare now at southwest.com. And by Mazda. In every car we make, you'll see why driving matters. Another gorgeous sunset out to the west of Pro Fly Park. Nice inning by Nick Martinez. Yes, he gave up a run, but also with the help of his defense, left it at just one run. And a couple of very good defensive plays prevented any further damage. So Nick able to get back into the dugout, give the Rangers a chance to do some more damage offensively. It'll be the bottom third of the order. Ryan Rua, Adam Rosales, and Chris Jimenez here in the fourth. Rua skied out to fairly deep right field his first time. He takes strike one. .205 the average for Rua, and it looks like he's starting to get his offensive game together a little bit. Swing coming back, a little more consistent playing time for him. Down to the count here, 0-2. Rua on this homestand, 3 out of 10 with a home run and 3 runs driven in. 1 ball, 2 strikes. Kazmir had his first 1-2-3 inning last inning. And since the home run by Chris Jimenez, he's retired 6 straight Rangers. Changeup is a dirt ball. 2-2. Eight of the last 11 hits for Rua have gone for extra bases. Trying to start the Ranger fourth inning off by getting aboard. Able to just get a piece of that off-speed delivery. Astros have a shift on for Rua also. You don't see it as much with right-handed hitters, but you got 3 defenders on the left side of the infield. Back to the screen. If Kazmir is going to throw it out there, that's going to completely defeat the purpose of the shift. Altuve, the second baseman, playing a couple steps on the shortstop side of second. Pretty much a gaping hole at a normal second base position. Still 2-2.
I like Rua's idea. He sees that hole too, and he's shooting for it.
Well, that's the one thing I'm not really in agreement about with a guy like Kazmir, who's going to be around his location most of the time, on most nights. You know, you take away part of the play to him. He can't throw the ball inside now unless he's planning on getting a strike, a swing and a miss.
Right.
Three and 2. I said inside. He meant outside. Yeah. Can't leave a ball out there to where Ryan could take it the other way. Kazmir to the wind, the payoff pitch. Broken bat grounder on 2 hops down to Lowry. 1 gone. Well, Ryan 0 for 2 as he makes the right-hand turn at first. Adam Rosales will be next. Rosales struck out to end the Ranger first inning. Well, Adam comes to the plate hitting at .218. Rosales been struggling a little bit lately, but you go back over his last 20 starts. He's hit .266. Plus, he's pitched a couple times. He pitched well. That's important. Not.
I think it might be getting, wearing him down a little bit, getting on the mound there.
Could be. No balls and a strike. Ranger bench kind of settled in here this evening. It's out of play. Hey, with this Astros club, though, I think the Rangers found out you don't want to get too fat and happy about a 4-1 lead. A.J. Hinch's club is very capable of coming back, scoring runs in a hurry. Rangers fourth in runs scored this year at 473. Astros are third at 485. The changeup that floats low. And the count goes to a ball and 2 strikes. Prince Fielder and Adrian Beltre having that conversation. Kazmir reading the signs. And Rosales pokes one. Diving stop by Correa. The throw not in time. What a play to make it that close.
Well, if the Astros had come back and won that game last night, the play that would have allowed it was the play that he made on DeShields. That one just now was probably even better, but DeShields hit a rope in the gap. Looked like he was going to score a run or maybe 2. Came up and fired and got Delino. That one was a little tougher play, but he almost made it. Man, a guy that big's not supposed to be able to do that, is he?
No, he's not. That is a tremendous play. Nice strong arm across the infield. Look at that. In the opposite way.
Man, that's pretty good. Think he's got a future in this game?
Depends. He's got some work he's got to do.
He's got a present. I don't know if he's got a future. He's got a present right now. We're seeing it.
It's exciting to see a young kid like that play. It really is.
20 years old and hasn't been 20 for very long.
Boy, when you've got a top pick in the draft, all you can hope is that it's the year that one of these guys like him is available at the top of the draft. You can have the top pick in the draft, but if there's not this kind of a player available, there's not much you can do. Boy, when the Astros had that first pick that year and got this kid, they hit the jackpot. Be interesting to see. I can't remember all the names, but the first 3 players, I believe the first 3 players in this year's draft were all shortstops. A couple of college guys and a high school player. In fact, the Astros might have taken one of them.
Yeah, they had to
take the shortstop maybe
out of
LSU.
LSU or Vanderbilt.
Yeah, the one from Vanderbilt might have gone first, I think.
Yes, he was the #1 pick.
There's that note on Chris Jimenez, his home run, the first in almost 3 years. Takes that next off-speed pitch, floats in. We'll take you back to the second inning. Jimenez, a sky-high drive that just kept on carrying. Carlos Gomez completely fooled by that ball.
Kazmir's reaction was he thought it was hit pretty well. Gomez's reaction was he thought he was going to come in 2 steps and catch it. Just kept on going.
1-2 pitch. Slapped out of play.
Fight it off.
Now Chris now 4 out of 10. His go around here. This is 4th start for the Rangers. Scott Kazmir about ready to throw his 70th pitch of the night. He has 1 out and 1 on in the 4th inning. Two and 2. Jimenez checking with Tony Beasley down there at third. See what might be up with 2 and 2. Probably not much. Rosales steps his lead off from first. He's on the move. The pitch is swung on and missed. The throw is high and safe at second base is Rosales. So Adam with the stolen base. Jimenez gone on strikes, but Rosales in scoring position.
Rosie going on first movement. Good jump. Kept the body on the bag.
Here's a good shot right there for you. See all the action right in front of you. Got to have strong toenails to hang on to that thing.
You do.
Well, here's Delino to Shields now. 0 for 2 tonight. Chance to do some more damage for the Rangers here in the 4th inning. Takes a breaking ball for a strike. Delino got caught looking in a 3rd strike last time up. DeShields hitting lead off for the 23rd straight ball game. He has really been the catalyst for the Ranger offense. 1-1. The Rangers, since the break as a team, hitting .290, and they have scored 99 runs. Or make that 103 runs. That's second in the major leagues, and Delino DeShields a big reason why. Getting on base, scoring runs. May not be hitting for the average, but his on-base percentage, and it was one tick short of .370 as we started play tonight. He's had 11 walks since the All-Star break. Ooh, he had a pitch that stayed up a bit for him and fouled it back. 2 balls, 2 strikes. Our Ford leaderboard, we talked off and on about the runners in scoring position average for the Rangers. It was down, but since the All-Star break, Rangers are 6th in the American League at .287. Astros are 3rd at that .306 average. The Rangers turning things around in that department very handily. 2-2 pitch. Call strike 3. Delino caught looking again. So the Rangers get a hit but strand a runner. We have finished 4 full innings here at Globe Life Park. Rangers 4, Astros 1. Rewind showing you some of the great defense that we have seen in this homestand. The big plays in last night's ball game. That was with runners at 1st and 3rd and nobody out. That enabled the Rangers and Sean Donaldson to escape with not any damage done. And we've seen some great defense in this ball game already.
Yeah, last night Sam Freeman escaped, and so did Sean Donaldson. 1st and 3rd, nobody out. Boy, you don't expect to get out of that. You're hoping maybe to go into extra innings, but boy, 1st and 3rd to pitch out of that, Jim, that was something.
The Rangers leading 4-1 as Nick Martinez goes to work here in the 5th inning. Hank Conger, the catcher, takes ball 1. Conger lined to Adrian Beltre at third. His first time up there. Bottom third of the Astros order. And Nick misses outside again. 2 balls, no strikes. Now 3-0. Chris Jimenez is going to walk the ball about 10 feet toward the mound, say something to Nick and give him a chance to regroup. Nick has walked 2 tonight. He walked the leadoff hitter last inning. That was Carlos Gomez. Gomez came around to score. Right down the middle, 3-1. I mentioned Conger, a switch hitter, but boy, he has been good against right-handed pitching this year. He's hitting .356, and he takes the walk. Now, Luis Valbuena coming up. Let's check in with Emily Jones.
Well, one thing Nick Martinez took note of from the successful outings from his predecessors in the rotation was pace, and it's something he wants to keep an eye on and be mindful of tonight.
It kind of keeps him, rolling. It keeps him, energetic, and keeps the other pitcher tired, and hitters feed off that energy. If we're out there having quick innings, and it shows that the hitters are uncomfortable, and if our guys are having swinging the bats well, and their pitcher's uncomfortable, then our guys are going to feed off that. So it's very important for us to do that.
Hopefully that little chat with Maddox will get that pace picked up and back on track, fellas.
And hopefully Mike went out there and ordered up a double play ball, which he has done on several occasions lately. Luis Valbuena grounded out to Moreland at first. And he takes that knee-high strike, 0-1. Rangers in the overshift with Beltre not 25 feet off the line at third. He's the only player on the left side of the infield. Elvis right there next to second base, and Adam Rosales a little more than midway toward first. Out of play to the left, 0-2. Jack, we talked about the shift the way it is. Is it difficult from that alignment if the shortstop has to take a throw from the third baseman on a double play ball?
It is, because he's not quite all the way over on the second base side, so he's coming at a different angle, and the shortstop's not used to taking a throw from there to try and turn double play. But I think with Elvis's ability, and most shortstops, they can handle it, but I'm sure a lot of them are very uncomfortable. But the angle is totally different trying to turn a double play from that position.
Nice block by Chris Jimenez, keeping that ball right near home plate to prevent Conger from advancing. A ball and 2 strikes to Valbuena. Martinez, the belt high set. This is outside.
Now, this is the alignment the Rangers had for Valbuena last night. Man at first, nobody out. Bounce that little dribbler halfway between Adrian and Elvis. Looked like it set up a rally, but Sean Tolleson snuffed it out. First and third, nobody out.
And he was trying to do it again. Valbuena seeing that outside pitch that was reachable, and fouled it back to the screen. .73 pitches now for Nick Martinez. Ball strike ratio not exactly what he wants. 41 strikes, 32 balls. Hit hard but pulled foul down the first base side. Still 2-2. Nick, in case you missed it, celebrating his birthday. Hopes to be celebrating his birthday with another W tonight. Last Ranger pitcher to win on his birthday when he pitched. Matt Harrison back in 2012. Three and two. Conger staying put, and the pitch is popped up. Long run for Beltre. The wind pushing it back into the seats. It's back about 3 rows. Ryan Rua also over there, and neither one could reach into the stands to get it. We'll try the 3 and 2 again.
Phil Klein was up a couple of times in last night's game. Up early in this game.
Dick leaning in for the sign. And he has the one he wants. Saw that little flick of the thumb by Chris Jimenez, the catcher. That means he wants the pitcher to make a throw to first base so that he's free to watch what's going on without having to worry about catching a pitch. Another ball pulled sharply down the first base side.
Well, what Nick needs right here is a sinker down and away and pull it to Elvis and turn a little double play. Whoa, boy. The little girl in the red doesn't know how close she came to having that ball hit her right on top of the wall.
This one's popped up. Out in front of home plate. Beltre calling off Jimenez. Adrian there to make the basket catch. Very good at bat. Nick Martinez having to go to extra lengths to get Luis Valbuena.
He got him with a changeup. Valbuena was taking a lot of swings in that at bat, fouling off the balls away, pulling some balls in down the right field line, and then a changeup got him to pop it up, and Adrian puts the basket catch, and notice he uses that top hand to make sure the ball stays in his glove. He used 2 hands. All you little leaguers out there.
We'll have that discussion with
I know what it is. It's easier to catch a ball one-handed than it is to use 2.
It is.
Now here's Jake Marisnik. I don't know if he uses one hand or 2. He's got 2 hands on the bat. I know that. He pulls that pitch foul.
Might be an exception on a basket catch, though. Like if you're reaching up over your head, it is. But what about on that one? It's not that hard to do it on that one, is it?
No, it's not that hard to do it on that one. It's harder for kids, in my opinion, to use 2 hands, catch the ball over their head, because they tend to put that glove in front of their eyes, and they just miss everything. But the basket catch, that's a little bit more difficult kind of, catch that I think over your head. I never like doing that one.
Chopper, a fair ball. Adrian across the diamond. And he gets a hustling Jake Marisnik by a step and a half. Nice play by Beltre. Conger to second, but he's there with 2 outs now.
Well, I don't think Adrian has thrown better than he's thrown the last month or so. Every throw he makes, he's got something on it. All of them accurate. Playing some excellent defense at third base. Well, that's pretty much what you would expect him to do. Fortunately, that ball didn't hit the bag. It didn't miss it by much. Marisnik runs pretty well, but Adrian guns him out at first.
I still want to know how he gets that much carry throwing from down there.
Yeah, you'd think it would have a little more sinking action.
And not just down there, but flat-footed down there.
Well, here's Jose Altuve. Twice he has skied to center field. 1 ball, no strikes. Well, Altuve 0 for 2 tonight. As we mentioned in our opening remarks, Rangers have handled him extremely well. This series, he is 2 for 12. Conger getting his lead from second. Nick just off the outer edge. 2 balls, no strikes. These are the points we brought to you. This season, the Rangers have held him to a .229 average and a .275 on base percentage. 3 previous seasons against the Rangers, well over 300 for Altuve. And he has gotten out in front of the count now. 3 balls and no strikes. So Nick, in an effort to keep the ball away from Altuve, has fallen behind. And if he loses Altuve, have Carlos Gonzalez, the center fielder, in the on-deck circle. Three balls, no strikes. Altuve taken all the way, and it's 3-1. That last pitch right there at the top of the strike zone. And a chopper foul. The count has gone full. Our roaming RF camera out there above the bullpen in left center field, the Astros bullpen. Good look back at home plate. Beautiful night out here at Globe Life Park. Temperature now in the mid-90s. Rangers trying to keep things hot. Keep the heat on the Astros. Nick ready. A check of second. The payoff pitch to Altuve. Elvis charging. Nice job by Martinez to work around the leadoff walk. Well, the Astros strand their third runner. We've played half the ball game. Astros maintaining the deficit is 4-1 Rangers. Season. You can build your perfect plan by selecting the 20 games that work best for your schedule. You'll also save more than 20% on gate prices, enjoy a concessions discount, and receive many more exclusive benefits. Visit TexasRangers.com/20 game plans. Find out more information and pick out your 20 games. Well, the brooms are out. See if the Rangers can put them to work here in the bottom of the 5th inning. They lead 4-1. Ryan Strasburger to lead things off. He'll be followed by Prince fielder Adrian Beltre. Strasburger in his major league debut has reached on an error and scored. That was back in the 1st inning. A pretty good hack at that pitch. Fouling it straight back. That bunt that Strasburger laid down in the first he was credited with a sacrifice, so no time at bat. Takes the next pitch in at the knees. Ryan, a 27-year-old from Elkhart, Indiana. Hit well to center field. Gomez retreating, still going back, reaches up and makes the catch. Strasburger gave that a ride to center, and Gomez showing you the Gold Glove caliber play that he can put forth.
A nice way to start the fifth inning. Gomez playing over in right center field. Ball hit directly over his head. Boy, he had to use every inch of that lunge to catch it right in the top of his glove. Would have been a nice way to get your first major league hit.
Now, one gone. Here's Prince Fielder. Gets fisted. Altuve dives. From the knees, he throws out Fielder. Couple of pretty good defensive plays back to back. And with 2 outs, Adrian Beltre coming up. We're going to send it over first, though, to Dana Larson for a Mazda game break. All right, Dana, thank you. Rangers, of course, after the off day tomorrow, will be in Seattle. Take the Mariners over the weekend. Get our second look at Cole Hamels on Friday night. Hamels and Hisashi Iwakuma will match up in that ball game. Adrian Beltre has walked and scored. He's also flied to center. There's Cole. Settling in as part of the Rangers. He was talking the other day about how happy he was to be in Texas, and very comfortable for him. He's got some relatives here, and they're coming to a team that has postseason aspirations and legitimate aspirations. So it's really refreshing. Jump throw by Correa got Beltre. Wow. There's 3 pretty good defensive plays to send the Rangers down in order. Carlos Gomez, Altuve, and now Correa, and the Rangers are gone. 4-1 Texas after 5. Thanks, Mac. We'll see you after the ball game on Rangers Live. And Nick Martinez is not in there any longer. We'll tell you about Phil Klein, but first of all, our Coors Timeless Moment. How about back in this date in 1921, radio station KDKA, the first radio broadcast of a Major League game. The Pirates defeated the Phillies 8-5 in Philadelphia. The first time the baseball was on the air. And no, Tom and I were not involved.
That would be great to go back and listen to the first broadcast of a major league game and to listen to the announcers.
I'm sure
they
that
probably didn't have the press notes to work off of like we do today.
Oh, goodness. Well, Phil Klein has come into the ballgame. Nick Martinez out after 5 innings of work. Phil out there for the first time since being recalled for the 4th time from AAA. Phil last appeared in the major league stage on the 28th of July. Worked in the Yankee series a couple of times. Working here with the Rangers leading 4-1. And Klein dealing to Carlos Gomez, starting things off in the 6th inning. Phil fires a strike. Gomez has walked and scored and popped out this evening. Astros with just 1 hit. That was the RBI double by Jed Lowry that scored Gomez. A ball and 2 strikes. Big, tall right-hander Phil Klein to the plate. 2-2. Next offering is foul back to the screen. Phil, you remember, came up for the final 2 months of last year with the Rangers. Very, very impressive, and he's still considered a rookie this year. Didn't get enough innings to lose that rookie status. Misses high. The count is now full. So Gomez leading off the 6th inning, to be followed by the shortstop Carlos Correa.
You definitely don't want to walk him. Last time he walked, stole second, and scored a run.
Sharply hit, but Adam Rosales playing up the middle throws out Carlos Gomez for out number 1.
So he didn't walk him. Got him to hit second base instead. Gomez plays hard, boy. He hustles. He runs to first. He throws it as hard as he can. He sprints after it. He swings as hard as he can. His helmet goes flying. That guy put something into his game, boy. A fun player to watch.
And you can kind of see with his mannerisms why he would get under the skin of some opponents.
You know, he does, but at the same time, he usually, when he does something like that, he smiles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That'll get under the skin of some opponents, too. He's smiling all the time. Correa takes outside for ball 1. No, but you're right. He's hustling all the time, and a very energetic player. Carlos Correa looks like he's fairly energetic, too. Plus talented. Takes a knee-high strike. Correa tonight has grounded to Beltran and grounded to Elvis. 0 for 2. Batting average currently at .289. On the outside corner, Phil got the call. Just nibbling at that corner. 1 ball, 2 strikes. Phil Klein out of Youngstown State University. Still holds a lot of pitching records for the Penguins. 2-2. Phil was a 30th round pick by the Rangers back in the 2011 draft. Standing side saddle on the mound, goes to the wind and just misses low. The second straight hitter now. Phil has worked the count all the way out. 3-2 to Correa. Correa to be followed by Jed Lowry. Now the payoff pitch. Rangers have done a pretty good job handling Correa in this series, as a matter of fact. He is just 1 for 10. Ball 4. Correa draws the 1-out walk. That'll bring up Lowry. Well, folks, on Saturday, August 15th, Rangers take on the Tampa Bay Rays in a 7:05 game, and the first 10,000 fans 14 and older will receive one of 4 different Star Wars themed t-shirts. That's courtesy of Takis. Fans will also enjoy appearances from, that man among others, the Star Wars characters. Visit TexasRangers.com to purchase your tickets, or you can call 972-RANGERS. I'm not sure that's a stormtrooper that I remembered, but my memory's not that good anymore. First pitch to Jed Lowry is high, and Chris Jimenez is going to go out and talk to Phil Klein.
We talk about the Astros and the power that they have. They hit a lot of home runs. They lead the major leagues in home runs. I've said this many times too. So one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to walk anybody. Put men on base. Make them hit their way on. Walk people. And then someone hits a home run and it really hurts.
Correa inching off the bag at first. Rangers shading around to the right, not in an overshift for Lowry. There goes Correa. The pitch is outside. The throw is late. And Correa with the stolen base. That is his 7th of the year. And don't forget, his year started in early June. Two 2-0 the count now to Lowry. 2-1. Yeah, if there's one thing I think the Rangers would like to see from Phil Klein, a little more consistency in the strike zone. Phil's only bugaboo is that he averages about 1 walk every 2 innings. A little bit high. He's going to come out of the bullpen in tight situations. Shot foul the other way, and the count evens at 2 balls, 2 strikes. One thing we noticed, though, immediately last year when we first saw Phil Klein in Cleveland, where he made his major league debut, the ball gets on the hitter a lot quicker than the hitter thinks. He's sneaky fast. Big, tall guy, and has kind of a short arm motion, and hitters don't pick up the ball very well. Check of second, the 2-2 pitch. 3-2. All 3 hitters for Phil in this inning now have gone full. Lowry hitting in the 4th spot, to be followed by the designated hitter, Evan Gattis. Klein ready. Correa going to 3rd. The pitch is outside. The throw is no, and not in time. Correa sliding around the tag by Beltre. The walk to Lowry. And now the Astros have runners at the corners and 1 out for Gattis.
We saw Correa steal 3rd base the other night. Rangers have a shot at him this time, but couldn't quite get him. Double play right here. He's off the base. He's off the base. Got back on the base.
And this is the angle you're looking at to see if your tag was made, and didn't look like it from there.
No, not quite.
Mike Maddox was waiting to make his trip to the mound before he's waiting to see if Steve Buechele got information from Joey Probinski that that might be a good challenge, but no, it's not going to be. So Michael head on out there to have a chat with his battery of Phil Klein and Chris Jimenez. So 2 walks in the inning. Couple of stolen bases for Correa. Elvis and Adrian talking things over. Correa now over at 3rd with Jed Lowry at 1st. Evan Gattis will be the hitter. Adrian said, no, don't even waste your time. I didn't get him. And he's the one that should know, I guess.
He does. He definitely knew. Didn't look like he got him from our angle, even though we're not very close to it.
Well, the conference on the mound concluded. Now Gaddis will step in. He is 0 for 2 or 0 for 1 tonight with a walk. He was out on a great play by Elvis Andrus in the hole last time. Breaking ball in for strike 1 from Phil Klein.
If the Rangers can escape another jam right here, get Gaddis to ground out to shortstop, turn a double play. 1 out, 1st and 3rd. Did it a couple of times last night, looking to do it again right here. A couple of walks, have a little rally going. The Astros have only had 1 hit in the game, but they've had 5 walks. The leadoff walk in the 4th scored the only run for the Astros.
Gaddis, as we mentioned, has one of those 5 walks. And he is a dangerous hitter in a run-producing situation. The 1-1 pitch. 1-2.
Sam Freeman is warmed up in the bullpen. This will probably be Phil's last hitter. You got a left-hand hitter coming up next, and then a switch hitter. Under much better swinging left-handed than he is right-handed, though.
Sam out there along with Andy Hawkins, the Ranger assistant pitching coach, bullpen coach. 1-2 pitch coming from Klein. To right field, falling in a hurry. That's down for a base hit. Correa will score. Stopping at second is Lowry. The RBI single to Evan Gaddis that cuts the Ranger lead to 4-2. And still just 1 out with 2 on. Gaddis drives in his 60th run of the year with that base hit. And that is going to do it for Phil as Jeff Bannister wants to go to the left-hander with Colby Rasmus, the scheduled hitter. And we'll see how that shakes out. We'll take a timeout. Pitching change underway here at Globe Life Park. We're back right after this. U.S. Armed Forces serving around the world on land and on ships at sea. Welcome to all of you and thank you for your service. Sam Freeman has come out of the Ranger bullpen to take over. He inherits runners at first and second. He'll be facing Colby Rasmus, a left-handed hitter, and he's not being taken out for a pinch hitter. So A.J. Hinch figuring that Rasmus has as good a chance as maybe a right-handed hitter against Sam Freeman, considering that Sam Freeman, as we've mentioned, has the reverse splits.
Yep, they're looking at the same numbers, Buzz.
And Sam, you saw 39 appearances coming into tonight. Left-handers hitting about 100 points higher than right-handers against Freeman. Got Lowry at second, Evan Gattis at first. The tying runs are on base. Rangers leading it 4-2. Rasmus tonight has lined to right and skied to center field. Freeman has worked now in each of the 3 games against the Astros. On Monday night, through 2/3 of an inning, retired both hitters he faced. And last night had a little bit of a rocky outing, but it was a scoreless frame. Gave up a hit and a walk. Also had a strikeout. Good fastball that kind of tied Rasmus up.
And Sam has really worked his way into the main rotation coming out of that bullpen. He's pitching in some meaningful games now with the Rangers playing well. Getting some valuable experience pitching in crunch time.
Freeman last night walked Rasmus when he faced him. And he's fallen behind now 2-1. Rasmus a .235 average. With runners in scoring position, a much better hitter. .288 the average. Got Lowry at second, trailed by Gattis at first. Freeman's going to back off the pitching rubber. Lowry walked. Gattis singled in Carlos Correa, who had walked. And Freeman looking for a way out here. 2-1 pitch. 3-1. As we saw last night, Rasmus, pretty good eye at the plate. He will take the walk. He had 3 of them last night. Rangers shifted around to the right, but not in an overshift. That's outside, ball 4. That will load the bases. And Hank Conger coming up. 3rd walk of the inning, 6th walk of the game by Ranger pitcher.
You can pitch around a walk or 2. It's tough to pitch around 6 walks, especially 3 of them in 1 inning. Now it really is going to take some artistry to get out of this one. Although Conger is a .159 hitter, right-handed, struck out 23 times in 63 at bats, only 10 times swinging left-handed. So got a better chance to get him right-handed than you do left-handed.
One thing about Conger, he's zeroed in on the home run. He had never had a multi-home run game until Saturday, and one of those 2 home runs that he hit Saturday was a grand slam. Those came against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Career high 5 RBI in that game. He's up in a tough spot here. Bases loaded, 1 out, and Freeman misses inside for ball 1. Conger has walked and lined to 3rd. Both those at bats were against the starter, Nick Martinez. Freeman's next pitch. 2-0. Like Sam was just trying to guide that one. Three walks and a hit in the inning. 1 out, a run across, and the Astros threatening to do more damage. (3-0).
No defense against a walk. Rangers are playing some pretty good defense, but you can't defense it if they don't put it in play.
Got it on the corner. 3 balls and a strike.
You know, for Conger, we've got to take a pitch right here. Hopefully he doesn't look at it that way and grounds one to shortstop.
Spencer Patton loosening in the Ranger bullpen. 3-1 pitch. Lost him, ball 4. That forces in a run, and it cuts the Ranger lead to 4-3. Conger with the RBI on the walk. 21 RBI now for Conger. Elvis going in to talk to Sam Freeman. Take up a little bit of time as Spencer Patton continues to loosen. But you've got the left-hander Luis Valbuena at the plate. I know that the left-hander matchup doesn't necessarily mean much, but considering Sam Freeman's splits against left-handers, last night Valbuena flying to left field against Freeman. Here the tying run is at third with just one out. Valbuena 0 for 2 tonight. And he gets a strike at the bottom of the zone. Sam coming in with something other than a fastball on the first pitch. Valbuena, one career grand slam to his credit. Inside. 1 ball and 1 strike. A perspiration-inducing moment. Freeman with the bases loaded, a 1-run ball game. 1-2. Rangers have given the Astros 4 walks in this inning, 7 walks for the game. Gaddis has the only hit in this frame. That was an RBI single. Rasmus at second had a walk, and Conger at first had a walk. Now the 1-2 pitch. Line down the right field line, but foul. We'll come back and try it again. This is an Astro team that not noted for taking base on balls. Their on-base percentage as a team, 13th in the league. They're at .312. They make that 8th in the league at .312. This already ties the most walks they had drawn all year. Another 1-2 pitch is on the way. Luis Valbuena came over from the Chicago Cubs. That deal that sent Dexter Fowler to Chicago.
Yeah, the thing that hurts is the Astros really have not done any damage offensively. The hits they've got have driven in guys who have walked. But you walk a guy, Rasmus, who's a .230 hitter. He struck out 100 times already this year. And then Conger's below 200 hitter right-handed. He struck out about a third of the time hitting right-handed. Walked both those guys to force in a run.
Way outside. Nice play by Chris Jimenez. Almost had that ball sneak by him. He was set up inside. That ball was in the other batter's box. Now he was set up outside. Take it back, but it still had to reach for it. Oh, 2-2 now the count. Sam shaking off a couple of signs. Now picks one out. And Valbuena spoils an off-speed pitch. This is the third hitter that Freeman has pitched to in this inning. 17 pitches already for him. It has been a struggle.
It's been probably over somewhere around 40 pitches, more than 40 pitches maybe, which I guess is not unusual if you have 4 walks.
Got him swinging. Freeman able to go up the ladder. Valbuena couldn't climb that high, and that is a huge punch out. 2 gone. And 2-2 fastball up above the letters. Valbuena, and he swung underneath it, and that's going to do it for Sam Freeman. So he does get the left-hander Valbuena. The bases remain loaded with 2 outs. Jake Marisnick, the scheduled hitter, and Spencer Patton is coming out of the Ranger bullpen. Another pitching change underway. We'll take a timeout. We're back right after this. 13 and under with a back-to-school backpack. Come on out to Globe Life Park. Watch the Rangers take on the Seattle Mariners and get your kids geared up for school. Tickets are available at TexasRangers.com, or as always, you can call 972-RANGERS. Spencer Patton on now for his 20th appearance of the year. We saw Spencer last night at his best. He came in and worked a very quick inning, had a couple of strikeouts, and just overmatched the Astros. And he is on here to face Jake Marisnick with the bases full and 2 outs. Rangers leading 4-3, and Patton trying to keep it right there. Ball 1 is high. Marisnick a strikeout and a ground out tonight, 0 for 2. The outing for Patton last night came on the heels of 3 consecutive outings that he struggled. He gave up 6 runs in those 3 outings. It's a strike to even the count.
Marisnick's a pretty free swinger. He's been up 242 times. He only has walked 11 times. He's probably going to swing if it's around the plate.
Patton with a 1-1. Marisnick, right on cue, fouls it back.
He's set up for that slider now. He's seen 3 fastballs. Spencer has a pretty good slider. Used it last night very well.
Evan Gattis, Colby Rasmus, and Hank Conger, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st. 1 and 2 the count to Jake Marisnick. Patton to the plate. Popped him up. Shallow center field. The liner to Shields making the call and the catch, and that will do it. So nice job by Patton. The Astros score a couple of runs on 1 hit and 4 walks. They leave the bases full. After 5.5, Rangers 4, Astros 3. Jackpot is $300 and dinner for 2 at Sonic Drive-In. If a Ranger hits a home run during this inning, Francis Miller from River Oaks, Texas, will win $300. And if a Ranger hits a grand slam this inning, Francis is going to win $25,000. You can register at any participating Sonic restaurant. And, during his warm-up tosses, looked like Scott Kazmir back tightened up on him. Could have been sitting for that long half inning that the Rangers were out in the field. Here he is warming up between innings, went back out there. And got a little hitch in his get-along right there. Like somebody jabbed him with an ice pick. No, stretching it back out, he feels like he's going to be able to go. So we'll find out for sure. A.J. Hinch, I don't think he's totally convinced that Kazmir's okay, but he's going to take his word for it right now. Well, Mitch Moreland will start things off. Ranger lead is shrunk to just a single run. It's 4-3 Texas. And Mitch had an RBI single back in the first. He is 1 for 2 tonight. Astros going to that pronounced overshift with Moreland up there. And Kazmir significantly, as you look at the defensive lineman, Kazmir significantly back off the 92 or so fastball that he normally features. That was 86. 0-1 pitch. Nothing in 2.
Yeah, it may be not hurting him right now, but he's definitely not letting it go like he was earlier in the game.
And I think that's the right terminology too, Tom. Not letting it go. I think he's just inhibited from letting it go right now.
Yeah.
He's probably going to get better the more he throws. It's gone up a tick each pitch that he's made. 1-2 to Mitch. Base hit to right field for Moreland. And that off-speed delivery stayed up just enough for Mitch to be able to collect his second hit. And the Rangers have their leadoff man aboard.
The breaking ball is not as sharp, and the fastball is 4 miles an hour less. It means the differential between the fastball and the changeup is not quite the same. All adds up to it. It should be a little bit easier to hit him right now.
That's the 5th hit of the night for the Rangers. Mitch's second. Here's Elvis, who also has a base hit. He's going to bunt. He tried to push it and pushed it foul. Trying to get that between Kazmir and Valbuena coming down the line from first. Remember, Elvis a couple of nights ago got that job done. Chad Qualls loosening in support of Scott Kazmir out of the Astros bullpen. 0-1 to Elvis. Elvis 1 out of 2, drove in his 39th run of the year with a first inning single. No bunt here. Up the middle, that's a double play ball to Correa. Right at the bag, he turns it over. That removes Mitch Moreland, who had the leadoff single. There are now 2 outs. The base is empty for Ryan Rua. Pretty much tailor-made for a double play right there.
Yep.
Rua is fly deep to right field and grounded to third. 0-1. Rua with the average at 203 currently. Tom told you when we were going over the lineup that Rua had that inside the park home run. First one by a Ranger in this ballpark since Craig Gentry had one several years ago here. Fouled back, still 0-2.
Well, it looks like he got loosened up. Buzz. That last one was 91 miles an hour.
Yeah,
so you're right. The more he threw, the more it loosened up for him.
Now the question is, when he goes back and sits down, what's going to happen?
Yeah. They might not ask him to go back out there.
Probably not. Still 0-2 as Rua protecting that outside corner. And inside the Parker. First one by the Rangers in any park since Ian Kinsler had one back in 2013. There's a chopper foul. Gentry's was here against Seattle in September of 2011. Another 0-2. 1 ball and 2 strikes. That changeup floated very high. Kazmir nearing the 100 pitch mark. 95, 96 now on the way. Changeup just floated outside. at least according to home plate umpire Jim Reynolds. 2-2. A foul ball. Rua back in there. Kazmir staying right on top of the mound. And the left-hander getting the sign from Hank Conger. 3 balls, 2 strikes. Rua trying to extend this 6th inning. If he gets aboard, Adam Rosales will have an opportunity to bat. 3-2 pitch. Lost him. Rua working for the walk. He is aboard with 2 outs. Looking down to the Astros dugout to see if A.J. Hinch has any thoughts of going out to the mound. Qualls is ready if needed in the bullpen. Apparently not. Apparently he's going to let Kazmir work to Rosales. Adam, an infield single his last time up. 1 out of 2. And make that 2 out of 3 as he bangs one to left field for the base hit. Rua puts the brakes on as he goes around second. A walk now, a single with 2 outs. Runners at first and second. And Chris Jimenez will not face Scott Kazmir. A.J. Hinch on his way out to the mound. He will no doubt want Chad Qualls to come on into the ballgame. He signals that that's exactly what he wants to do. So Kazmir finished after 5 2/3 innings of work here tonight. He leaves trailing 4-3, and with a couple of runners on, his responsibility. So another pitching change underway here in Arlington. Rangers leading 4-3. We're back right after this. Taking on the Pirates in a key game for both those clubs. Then at 6 p.m. Central, the NL Central leading Cardinals battle the Brewers in a game you can only see on Fox Sports 1. Coverage begins at 2:30 p.m. Central Time only on Fox Sports 1 and streaming live on Fox Sports Go. Well, Chad Qualls, the 36-year-old veteran right-hander, now appearing in his 38th ball game, has come out of the Astros bullpen to take over. Qualls, a 1-4 record, ERA above 4. Opponents, though, hitting just .230 against him. 8 walks and 28 strikeouts in 32 innings. He inherits Ryan Rua at second, Adam Rosales at first, and Chris Jimenez at the plate. Chris 1 for 2 tonight with a home run. And Qualls with that slider in for strike 1.
love to come back and answer those 2 runs, all those walks, get a little base hit right here, and put another run on the board. Rangers made that 4-3 score stand up last night over the last few innings. Nice to get a couple more.
Jimenez fighting that foul to the right. It is 0-2. Ball's a classic sinker slider pitcher. Not much of a secret what he's trying to do, and he comes right at hitters. Originally the property of the Astros. They took him out of high school in the draft. Misses inside. 1 ball, 2 strikes. Qualls came to the major leagues back in 2004 with Houston. He has always been a reliever at the major league level. Spent time with the Diamondbacks, Tampa Bay, San Diego, Philadelphia, Yankees, and Pittsburgh. That's in the dirt. 2-2 now. Also a stint in Miami before coming back to the Astros. Last year the Astros had Qualls as their closer. They went out and got Luke Gregerson to take over that role this year and push Qualls back to a setup role. Rua at second, Rosales at first. 2 balls, 2 strikes with 2 outs. Conger flashing the signs. Now we're set. And Jimenez is spoiling a pitch away from him.
Trying to serve one out there to the outfield.
Yeah.
Maybe serve one out into the grass in center field like he did back in the 2nd inning. That'd be even better. Launched that sky-high fly ball that went 410 feet.
Yeah, Carlos Gomez still trying to figure that one out. Ball's ready. Another 2-2 pitch coming. Correa will throw to first for the out, and that'll do it. Rangers get a couple of hits and a walk, but strand 2. We're going to the 7th inning in Arlington. It's the Rangers 4 and the Astros 3. Quick start, Mitch Moreland, the RBI single, bringing home Ryan Strasburger, his first major league run score. Rangers put 3 on the board in the first, and Chris Jimenez launched a towering home run to dead center. His first home run in almost 3 years. That made it a 4-0 game. But back came the Astros. Jed Lowry with the RBI double in that 4th inning for Carlos Correa. The Astros would go on to add a couple of more in the sixth, making another one-run contest between these two teams. And as the Astros come to bat here in the top of the seventh, it is a 4-3 Ranger lead. And Spencer Patton back out to the hill, got the last out of the sixth inning, a fly ball from Jake Marisnik with the bases loaded. He'll face the top of the order, Jose Altuve, to start things off. And there's that slider from Spencer Patton, backing Altuve out and catching the inside corner. Altuve, 2 fly ball outs and a ground ball to short tonight. Another ground ball to Elvis.
Well, Altuve just not having the at-bats against the Rangers this year that he has in the past. Showed that in the pregame show. 220 hitter so far against the Rangers. Get him while you can get him, because once he gets hot, boy, he can put up 3 hits a night. Hit .341 last year to win the batting championship.
Yeah, you just hope you catch him and his teammates when they're down a little bit. Yeah, the Astros too have had trouble playing well against away from home this year. Well, that's the best time to lay it on them. And the Rangers trying to do that 3 straight.
And the Astros really aren't swinging the bats tonight. They've only had 2 hits. They've taken advantage of the walks. All 3 runs were scored by guys who had walked.
Carlos Gomez, the hitter at the plate now, one of those hitters. Walked to lead off the 4th inning. Came around and scored. A ball and a strike to him. Gomez 0 for 2, a .320 hitter with the Astros. This is 6th game in a Houston uniform. That just missed the outside corner. 2-1. Patton back to the plate. Chopper foul evens the count. Mentioned Gomez coming over from the Milwaukee Brewers along with starter Mike Fiers in a deadline deal. Last night, Gomez hit his 100th career home run. And he joined some pretty select company by doing that. Now 100 steals and 50 home runs over the last 4 years. He and Mike Trout, the only 2 that have accumulated those numbers. It's pretty exclusive. A full count here. Patton with a payoff pitch. Gomez didn't want to do it, and he is upset with himself.
That's almost the same pitch that Altuve struck out last night with in the last at bat of the game. Sean Tollison elevated one up and in. Not sure that that's where Spencer was trying to throw that ball. Probably not. Looked like he was trying to throw it down and away. But it ended up all right. Gomez upset with himself for offering it that pitch.
Gomez knew before that ball hit the glove that it was not good.
He was not going to make contact. Going to keep speed off the bases so he can't steal another base.
Well, here's Correa. And he takes strike 1 from Patton. Correa has grounded it out twice. He walked with 1 out in the 6th inning, stole 2 bases, and then scored on Evan Gattis' base hit. One ball and 1 strike. Correa, a big leaguer since June the 8th of this year. All of his numbers are just a partial season. Going on 2 full months now, but that's about a third of a season for you.
Good slider. Can't get hurt with that pitch. Spencer trying to back up last night's nice outing with another one today.
Yep. The 1-2 to Correa. Good fastball, got in on his fist.
Good combination.
Yep.
Slider away, fastball in. Now if you're Correa, you're thinking, oh boy, made me look bad on 2 pitches. What's it going to be this time around?
Yeah, and that was the same area that we saw him turn on a pitch in the 1st inning against Colby Lewis the other night. Got him on the slider.
Nice pitch.
Good job by Patton. Back-to-back strikeouts, Gomez and Correa. Spencer Patton retires 4 straight in an inning and a third. Correa, the latest victim. The Astros down in order. Will take the stretch. Rangers leading 4-3. Comment Bat, the #1 app for live baseball. At Bat is up to the moment at any moment with in-game highlights, live look-ins, replay reviews, radio broadcasts, statcasts, and a lot more. Get MLB.com at Bat for your smartphone or tablet. Spencer Patton really putting it to the Astros again tonight. A very speedy third. 3 up, 3 down in that top of the 7th. Now he gives the Rangers a chance to come out here in the bottom of the 7th, do some damage. They'll be facing Josh Fields. Remember, Fields came in relief in the first inning of the game here on Monday night. Took over for Lance McCullers, and Fields ended up working an inning and 2/3 in that game. He settled things down for the moment at that time. Delino to Shields is 0 for 3 tonight. A couple of strikeouts. He also reached via an error. Powering pop-up to shallow left. Correa and Marisnik. It's Marisnik making the call. 1 gone. Ryan Strasburger is headed to the plate. And before he comes in, let's send it over to Dana Larson for a Mazda game break. All right, Dana, thank you. The Angels scored 3 in that the bottom of the 9th inning. Scored 3 with 2 outs. Well, Ryan Strasburger will not get up. It'll be Shin-Soo Choo coming off the bench as a pinch hitter. Well, with the right-hander Fields out there, Jeff Bannister going to one of his left-handers on the bench, Shin-Soo Choo. Also has Hamilton and Odor to select from. Choo, a .239 average. Fields gets a strike right at the bottom of the zone. Shin-Soo, 14 home runs, 50 driven in. He is 0 for 2 in his pinch hitting experiences this year. Fields back to the plate. Nothing in 2 to Choo. Fields a good cut fastball, also that change of pace pitch that you saw. Slider will mix in an occasional curveball. He's got a varied assortment. One ball, two strikes. Fields back to the plate, and another foul ball. Last time we saw HOU as a pinch hitter, it's out in Colorado, the first game of the Rockies series. Pinch hit in the 8th inning of that ball game. Trying to get aboard with one out here in the bottom of the 7th. Josh Fields, the belt high set. 2-2 now. Fields, the third pitcher used tonight by A.J. Hinch. That's low. 3-2.
That's some concentrating, eyeballing those pitches by HOU. He's looking at them all the way. He's got a terrific eye, right?
HOU trying to get aboard as a pinch hitter. Prince Fielder, the Ranger DH, is next. Fields ready, the 3-2 pitch. High in the air to right field. Rasmus over and back near the warning track. 2 gone. HOU skies out. And with 2 away, Fielder coming up. Fielder had a sacrifice fly in the first inning. Drove home his 63rd run of the year. Other than that, he has struck out and grounded out. Rangers 4 runs on 6 hits tonight. Astros 3 runs on just 2 hits. They have committed 2 errors that cost them some runs in the first inning. Oh, 0-1 to Fielder. Popped up. Wind pushing that ball back and into the seats. Fielder facing Josh Fields. Josh Fields, the 29, soon to be 30-year-old out of Athens, Georgia. Fields a Rule 5 draft pick by the Astros from Boston. That was back after the 2012 season. Got him swinging. Fields coming down and in, and Fielder goes down on strikes. Rangers gone in order. We have finished 7 full innings here in Arlington. It's the Rangers 4 and the Astros 3.
Man of the game, you got to give it to Laura and Billy celebrating their 70th wedding anniversary, and they decided to bring their grandkids out of the game. Now, you are Laura, right?
I am Laura.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why here at the ballpark, Laura?
Well, it's a payback to these grandkids for the great job that they've done in celebrating our anniversary. So,
right. And Billy, how has it been married to Laura for 70 years?
Wonderful.
And you, Laura?
Well, it's been great.
All right. Well, how did you get the name Laura?
Well, I'm from a family of 15 children, and my twin brother and I was 12th and 13th. They ran out of names, so they didn't name us until we were 5 years old. And we named ourselves after a judge and his wife, Lee and Laura Clark.
All right. Well, congratulations. You got any big plans after the game?
Yes, we'll run around with these kids and see what they have up their sleeve.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, you got to take care of them. All right. Appreciate it. Congratulations. Enjoy the rest of the game.
Thank you. Way
to go, Laura. There we go.
It's pretty tough to go through 5 years of your life without a name.
Yeah. Well, at least they weren't alone. They had each other to hang on to.
But named after Judge Laura.
But Jake Diekman has come into the game to take over here in the 8th inning. And he is dealing to Jed Lowry to start things off. Lowry, of course, the switch hitter, will flip around to hit from the right side against the lefty Diekman. Jake appearing in his 5th ball game for the Rangers since coming over in the deal with the Phillies. That's out of play. And the count is a ball and 2 strikes. Diekman, in his first 4 outings, has worked 3 innings, has not allowed a hit, has walked 2 and struck out 3. That's just about as efficient as you can be. Noticed the other night when we were talking about Jake, the walk totals that he'd had previously, maybe a little bit of a difficult point for him, but boy, we haven't seen anything that would lead us to think that control issue had followed him here. He has thrown a lot of quality strikes. The 2-2 pitch. Now 3-2. Lowry has walked, doubled, and flied to center. 1 out of 2 officially. Lowry's double drove in his 11th run of the year. That was back in the 4th inning.
Guys, a guy that was really high on Jake Diekman before the trade was made was Michael Young, who played alongside him when he spent time in the Philadelphia Phillies organization. Had great things to say about the stuff that he had, about the teammate that he was, and I think that might have gone a long way in deciding who to add as far as pieces were concerned when the Cole Hamels deal came up.
I think that's a pretty good recommendation to have.
Say if you get that recommendation, it would carry a lot of weight for sure. Thanks, Ed.
No, the leadoff walk that puts Lowry aboard, brings up Evan Gattis, who is 1 for 2 tonight. Gattis also has walked and singled. Double play ground ball to Rosales.
So much
to Elvis.
leadoff walk.
There you go. That double play took care of everything. And there are 2 outs and the bases empty for Colby Rasmus. Well, if you're going to walk a leadoff guy, that's the best pitch to throw right afterwards.
Well, you walked the leadoff guy, get 2 outs with 6 pitches. Last night, he pitched 1 inning, and I guess threw 5 or 6 pitches last night, so he's doing it efficiently.
So 2 gone now, and Rasmus, who drew a walk his last time up, will step in. Rasmus 0 for 2. A couple of fly balls other than the base on balls. One ball, no strikes. Diekman last night worked the 8th inning, as Tom was telling you, 5 pitches total. He faced Correa, Carter, a pinch hitter, and Gattis. He got 3 ground balls in quick succession. 1-0 to Rasmus. Now 1-1. We were talking about both Jake and Sam Dyson out of that bullpen. This is the point we had for you before the ball game, how important they have been, and fortifying the back end of the bullpen. And John Daniels had made special mention that that was one of the things that he really wanted to do as this year went on, and looking toward next year also. And bringing in these 2 guys, Jake Diekman, of course, that power arm from the left side. You've seen him get the fastball up to 98 miles an hour or so, and also Sam Dyson, who has that heavy sinker in the mid 90s as well. John Danielson has done a great job of fulfilling the need that he saw in that bullpen. Good breaking ball. 2-2.
The two other guys that over the foreseeable future will probably be back. Two guys who are throwing the ball well. Anthony Bass, eligible to come back soon. And so is Keone Keller. There'll be two more guys that can fortify the bullpen.
To right field, that is going to be through the shift for a base hit. HOU, who stayed in the ball game to take over in right field, gets the ball back in.
He looked like he hit an off-speed pitch. Had the fastball thrown right by him, and then that one looked like it was kind of right in his wheelhouse. He was able to get the good, not the good part of the bat, but get the bat head out anyway and hit it into right field. And at this stage of the game, with every guy that gets on, one more guy at the top of the order will have a chance to hit. Altuve now, if you can get Conger right here, Altuve will be the third hitter next inning. One more guy gets on, then it's Gomez. One more guy gets on, then it's Correa.
And Conger has walked twice, once with the bases loaded. Gave him an RBI, and he fouls that pitch back for strike one. As Tom told you, Conger much better as a left-handed hitter than he is as a right-handed hitter. In fact, as a left-handed hitter, he has one of the better marks in baseball against right-handed pitching. 356. He's got an 1187 OPS, on base plus slugging. That pitch gets away from Chris Jimenez, so down to second goes Rasmus. Now he's in scoring position with 2 outs. Wild pitch. Charge to Jake Diekman. Well, Rasmus at second now. Count of 1-1 with 2 outs. Rasmus carrying the tying run right behind Diekman. That's out of play, and Jake with the advantage and a ball and 2 strikes. Conger this year ranks first among all major league hitters against right-handed pitching in on-base plus slugging and slugging percentage. If you have 50 or more plate appearances. And he is no slouch on the right side. On the left side, I should say. To right field, HOU toward the line, is there in time, makes the catch, and that'll do it. No runs, a hit. The double play helps. 1 man left after 7.5. Rangers lead it 4-3.
to a 1-run lead over the Astros. The Rangers going for a sweep in this Lone Star series, or at least this 3-game series within the season-long series between these two teams. They will have an off day tomorrow in which they will travel to Seattle for a 3-gamer against the Mariners. Cole Hamels will make his second start as a Ranger, go up against the former Ranger, Nelson Cruz, who is second in MLB with 31 home runs. And guys, a bit of an oddity as the Rangers have won now 6 of their last 7, going for 7 of their last 8 tonight. The only loss within that stretch has been the one started by Cole Hamels, which the streak started when the trade wasn't official, but it was pretty much a done deal. Kind of weird.
Adrian Beltre shooting one into the gap. Adrian puts the brakes on as Rasmus did a good job of cutting that ball off and getting it back to second base in a hurry. But Adrian aboard with his first hit of the night. He's now 1 for 3.
You see the kind of athlete that Rasmus is when he goes back and cuts this ball off in the gap. Looked like it was maybe not going to get to the wall, but it looked like it was going to get far enough past Rasmus where he couldn't hold Adrian to a single. He catches it and turns around and fires a 1-hop strike to second base. Nice play.
Adrian watching it all the way. That's how he made his decision. And good job by Rasmus. But Adrian aboard. Rangers now with 7 hits tonight. Mitch Moreland facing Pat Neshek. The right-hander with the funky delivery misses down and in for ball 1. Neshek, a 34-year-old veteran, one of several veterans in that Astros bullpen. His 47th appearance of the year. .293 ERA. Opponents hitting just .186 against the right-hander. Chopper foul. Neshek, you remember, last year was with St. Louis, but prior to that, spent a couple of years in Oakland. Also had some time in San Diego. Came up originally with the Twins. Neshek out of Butler University. There's that slow off-speed pitch, and Mitch just able to tick it foul. That's his super slow changeup. 1-2 to Moreland. Mitch tonight 2 for 3, a pair of singles, an RBI. He's got Beltre at first, nobody out here in the 8th inning. About a 22-mile-an-hour difference between that changeup and the fastball. Hitch with that average, as you can see now, back up to 288. Conger wants that fastball away from Moreland. And he went upstairs with it and got Mitch to swing through it. And Neshek gets the strikeout, 1 away. And Elvis Andrews coming up. I'm going to show you tonight's strongest fan photo selection. Good folks at T-Mobile making all this possible. And tonight's selection from Charlene. Very nice, Charlene. Thank you very much for sending that along. If you'd like to have your fan photo, your strong fan photo, popped in there to see if we can get it on the air. Just use hashtag Southwest Data StrongFan. Your photo might be selected to be aired during one of our upcoming broadcasts. Again, it's all brought to you by the good folks at T-Mobile. 1 on, 1 out. Neshek misses outside to Elvis. Andrus 1 out of 3 tonight. Had an RBI single back in the 1st inning. Elvis currently hitting a .258. A lot of different.
He's tough to pick up.
Yeah.
And he's got an assortment of pitches and a variety of speeds.
I always like to look at how the pitches are defined in these charts that we get. Neshek, it says he throws a sinker, slider, and changeup, but he doesn't say he throws them about 5 different speeds.
No.
and from a weird angle.
Well, you see guys throw from all different angles, sidearm pitchers, submarine pitchers. He's somewhere in between. But you'd love to have seen the day that he decided that's the way I'm going to start throwing. Because he made a good decision.
Yeah, he did.
Because the deception he has and the ability to throw pretty hard from that angle really made him a pretty solid reliever.
Yeah, 91 with that motion is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
You saw the spread all the way from 68 up to 91, 23 miles an hour. That's not easy for a hitter to pick up and adjust to, especially when you only see him one time a game. 2-2 to Elvis. Line to left field. Maristic coming on, makes the catch about knee high. Maristic got fooled by that ball immediately and made a nice adjustment on it. 2 outs.
Took a slight step back, paused. He's a good outfielder. He's got good reflexes, good actions out there, strong arm, very good outfielder.
Well, when the Astros get George Springer back in about 3 or 4 weeks, they're going to have 4 guys that can play center field. You Springer, you got Rasmus, who was a center fielder, Carlos Gonzalez, and Jake Maristic.
Boy, then you look at the defense that Altuve plays at second.
Yeah.
Correa plays at shortstop. He's got solid catching. Good defensive ball club.
Ryan Rua at the plate. 0 for 2 with a walk tonight. And Neshek drops that off-speed pitch in for strike 1. It's 1 ball and 1 strike. Adrian Beltre led the inning off with a solid base hit to right center field. Here's Sam Dyson. He is loose and ready if called upon in that Ranger bullpen. 1-2. I want to point out that unless it was an absolute necessity, Sean Tollison was not going to be used tonight. Tolly's worked in 6 of the 7 games, 6 of the last 7 games. And Jeff Anderson said, unless we just completely ran into an emergency, he'd rather stay away from him tonight.
Boy, that's one of the perils of playing a lot of good baseball and a lot of close games. Your closer gets a lot of work, so do the late inning guys.
Yep. Well, Rua gone on strikes, and that'll do it for the Rangers. No runs, a hit, 1 left. We are going to the 9th inning. Sam Dyson ready if called upon. 4-3 Texas.
HOU all over again. The Rangers with a 1-run lead in a 4-3 game, heading to the top of the 9th, looking to close out the Houston Astros. Dana Larson here reminding you we've got the post-game show coming up right after the game. Join me, Mark McLemore, and Pudge Rodriguez as we wrap up this game. We wrap up this homestand. We'll hear from the manager, Jeff Bannister, Emily Jones, of course, in the clubhouse with player reaction, and we will look ahead to the series in Seattle with Cole Hamels on the mound on Friday night. So please join us right after the game, me, Mac, and Pudge. But for now, we'll get it back to Buzz and Tom, guys.
All right, Dana, thanks very much. Well, Jeff Bannister sent Jake Diekman out there to take his warm-up tosses, and then A.J. Hinch decided he was going to pinch hit for Luis Valbuena. He brought up a switch hitter, Marwin Gonzalez, once he was announced. And Jeff Bannister said, okay, we're going to bring in the right-hander. So Sam Dyson coming out of the bullpen will effectively start this the top of the ninth inning. Rangers leading 4-3. Another timeout. We're back right after this. Marwin Gonzalez is going to lead off this ninth inning. And Sam Dyson has come out of the bullpen to take over. This is Dyson's fourth appearance with the Rangers. He is 0-1, 1-for-1 in save opportunities. Got his first career save on Sunday. ERA of 3.38. Opponent's average 4.17. And he will face Marwin Gonzalez, a switch hitter who will bat from the left side. Gonzalez hitting at 263. 7 home runs, 22 RBI. And the first pitch, that big sinking fastball, in for strike one. Gonzalez this year is 1 for 6 as a pinch hitter. Sam, back on Monday night, worked 2/3 of an inning. In here to see if he can close this one out. There's another hard sinker. That's down and away. 1-1. On Monday night, Dyson faced Altuve, Carlos Gonzalez, and Correa. Gave up an infield single, was it. That pitch foul back and out of play. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Dyson, a 27-year-old. He's from the Tampa Bay area. Went to college at South Carolina. Missed the 2011 season. Had Tommy John surgery. Originally with the Toronto Blue Jays. Came up with them in 2012. Base hit to right field. Gonzalez able to shoot it through the hole on the right side, and the Astros have the tying run aboard with nobody out here in the ninth inning.
Oh, sinker ball pitchers, usually a ground ball pitcher. Leadoff walk last inning was erased immediately by a double play. Ground ball by Gonzalez, but it found a hole.
So Gonzalez aboard, and now A.J. Hinch again going to his bench. Jason Castro, the second catcher of the night anyway, is coming off the bench. Good left-handed hitter. Castro, a .222 average, 10 home runs, and 29 driven in. And Castro, of course, had good success in this ballpark. Goes after that first pitch, the heavy sinker, and fouls it off to the left. 0-1.
Castro was a big strikeout victim in last night's game at a key moment. First pinch hitting appearance for him. Generally, catchers aren't guys that would pinch hit. Late in the ball game, got to go for it though.
Dyson a check of first. The 0-1 is coming to Castro. Little number out in front of home plate. The only play that Jimenez has is to first. And it works like a sacrifice. Puts the tying run in scoring position now with one out from the top of the order.
Good sinking fastball down and away. He's got a little piece of it. If he got a little more of a piece of it, maybe he would have grounded it to shortstop.
Yeah.
Instead, you're right, Buzz. It works just like a sacrifice, so it turns out to be a decent out for the Astros.
So Gonzalez at second. Jose Altuve 0 for 4 tonight. 2 ground outs, 2 flyouts. Altuve now hitting at .294. And just as tough as ever. Out of play on the first base side. Altuve against Dyson on Monday night struck out. Altuve in this series just 2 for 14. Sam Dyson trying to make that 2 for 15. Right-hander okays the sign, a check of second. 1 ball and 1 strike. Dyson made his major league debut with the Blue Jays in just 2 games in 2012. He went over to the Miami Marlins. He was a waiver claim by the Marlins. Out of play, 1 ball and 2 strikes.
As usual, the game's coming right down to the wire, and the outs you have to get are tough outs to get. Altuve and Gomez after him. One thing you can do with Altuve when he gets 2 strikes, especially in a situation like this, we saw it last night, is he will expand the strike zone.
Yep.
He's not up. You almost can't walk him in this at bat. Only walked 23 times.
Yeah, the question is, where do you expand it with him? A sinker ball pitcher, even though it's a hard
to
sinker
throw the
ball.
hard fastball,
yeah.
isn't it? High fastball.
Well, I would think that's not his strong suit.
No.
Just because he doesn't try to do it very often.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
That's what Sean threw him last night.
Right. A ball and 2 strikes. Fans getting behind Sam Dyson and their Rangers. He tried to get it up there.
Good try.
And just missed. 2-2.
The only reason he didn't swing at that is he couldn't. If that ball was about a couple inches more toward the plate, he might have swung at it.
Nick Martinez, the pitcher of record for the Rangers. Nick worked the first 5 innings on his birthday here tonight, his 25th birthday this evening. The 2-2 pitch coming. High and tight, knocked him down, and it hit him. Dyson maybe trying to throw that high fastball to get Altuve to expand his strike zone. Lost control of it, and Altuve, boy, he avoided some serious hit. I don't know. Got him on the shoulder.
Just ticked his arm. Wow. Boy, got to have some reflexes to dodge that 95-mile-an-hour pitch.
Altuve, one of those hitters that likes to dive into the pitches anyway.
Yeah.
Jeff Bannister waiting to get word from upstairs. Joey Pravinsky looking at the replays. Whether a pitch hits a batter or not is a challengeable play. And Steve Buechele waiting for word from Joey.
And it looked like it ticked his guard. Just the edge of the guard.
And that is the word that came down to Boo, who gave it to Jeff Bannister. So 2 on with 1 out. The tying and go-ahead runs aboard for the Astros. Here we go again. It's kind of like last night.
Well, it doesn't get any easier when you look at the hitters you've got coming up. That kind of a hit by pitch, there's no way the umpire saw that, but he probably heard it. Heard that little click when it hit the pad. You got Gomez, then you got Correa. 2 free swingers that are very difficult outs. Looking for that ground ball, turn a double play, get out of it. Just like Hunter Pence the other night when San Francisco was in town.
And Gomez 0 for 3 with a walk and a run scored tonight. This pitch is low for ball 1. Gomez, other than the walk, which was back in the 4th inning, has popped out, struck out, and grounded out. Ranger defense at double play depth up the middle. And Rosales, the second baseman, cheating toward the bag a bit. Dyson with the 1-0. Going outside, 2 balls and no strikes. Jim Reynolds, the home plate umpire tonight, has had a very tight strike zone and has been that way for everybody. A.J. Hinch watching from his vantage point in that Astros dugout. The 2-0. Now 2-1. Well, you're right, Tom. Carlos Gomez does nothing at less than 100% speed.
No.
And he even talks to himself fast.
Look, now he's mad at his bat.
Yeah.
They gave me a pitch to hit. I swung it. You got to hit it.
2-1 now.
Motivational technique.
Gonzalez away from second. On the outside corner.
Keep it right there.
2-2.
You hit that pitch, you got a good chance to hit that double play grounder.
Gomez waiting. Marlon Gonzalez at second. Jose Altuve at first. A 4-3 Ranger lead, 1 out in the 9th inning. Got him swinging.
That's some heat.
95 and diving. 2 gone.
Watch the movement on this sinker. Oh boy. You can't take that pitch because it looks like a strike at the knees and then it just sinks down around the ankles and batter swings right over the top of it.
That's a pitcher's dream, is they send every hitter back talking to themselves. So 2 outs. Here is Carlos Correa. And Correa on Monday night had a ground ball to third against Sam Dyson. And Dyson trying to catch Marlon Gonzalez, straying a little too far from second. Gonzalez recognized it and headed back to the bag. Correa tonight, a walk in 4 trips to the plate. 0 for 3. Dyson with the first pitch to him. Ground ball in the hole. Elvis, the short way, the first, and that is a winner for the Rangers as they sweep the Houston Astros. Happy birthday, Nick Martinez. That's his 7th win of the year. The 2nd save for Sam Dyson in his career. And they have both come in the last 4 days. as he got the save Sunday against the Giants and here tonight against the Houston Astros. Now another gut-wrenching night at the ballpark.
I mean, also,
boy, tight games night after night against these Astros. A great series. Rangers end up winning all three from Houston, and they close the gap to the Astros to just 5 games now. So they pick up 3 games in this series, and the force play at second did it and got the Rangers hopping over that rail to congratulate each other. Jeff Bannister's club now 1 game over 500. And they have not been in this territory since back in the 1st of July. Nice to see the club back over 500 and playing this way at home. That is the one thing that you had to worry about with the Rangers. They started playing better baseball, but they started doing it on the road. Could they bring that home? The answer has been yes. They've gone 7-3 on this homestand. And we will head down now to the field. Emily Jones is standing by.
Sam Dyson, who gets his first save as a Texas Ranger. Oh, wait, you're right. I mean, you make quick work of things. Thanks for the correction. The impact you've had between you and Jake Diekman kind of redefining this bullpen. What's it been like the last week for you guys?
Just very exciting. I mean, we've got some electric arms down there in the pen, and, you know, it's just nice to help out and, you know, I guess, you know, play for a, you know, solid chance of being in the playoff.
Wow. That was, that may have been more impressive than what you just did on the mound. He doesn't need a towel. Nobody needs a towel. Well played, sir. I don't know how it is out there, but from where I've sit, it's been pretty stressful the last, several games. But I would assume you guys are just used to it, part of the job?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of used to the stressful situations. It was definitely nice to get thrown in the fire right away and just kind of get your feet wet. And I think that kind of helps with the stress. The more stressful situations you deal with, it's kind of your heart's not pounding as much, and you just go out there and you stick to your strength, and you don't do stuff that you're not accustomed to doing.
We talk to guys about being in a zone, whether it be on the mound or at the plate. When a team seems to be in a zone like this, how do you stay in it?
I think you just go with the flow of the team and just continue to feed off their vibes. And if they're struggling, it affects the team. But whenever they're playing well and doing things right on the field, it's great.
You're doing something right when you can avoid an entire Gatorade shower, Powerade shower, without getting a drop on you. Well played, sir. Up top, congratulations. We'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Emily, thank you. Sam Dyson and the Rangers making a clean sweep over the Houston Astros, 4-3 the final tonight. We'll come back with some more thoughts and lead you right into Rangers replay, or I should say Rangers Live, right after.